Okay. Yeah, I would try to get it solved. I was actually going to do it anyway because it's okay. So halfway through the week, we did most of the days, still missing two. Energies are going very low, and it's okay. What happened last night was an amazing thing that some of you were there, some of you weren't, but I would like to share. So basically, 20 persons decided to spend 2 hours over their evening talking about how they were feeling and um, what home and belonging meant to them. And it was an amazing experience. And it was incredible to see that so many people wanted to be there and talking about that and were really committed to it. So I'm really thankful for all of you who were there and also those of you who weren't, because you will be there briefly now for some time. Why this? Because, okay, so most of you already know the mechanism. What we go through the morning is this. We get a question, you'll get a minute to think about it, 2 minutes to share with another person, 2 minutes to share in groups of 4, and then all together. So we're getting it solved this morning, and what I would like you to do now is to think of a moment of this week where you have felt vulnerable or that was triggering for you some way, and if you overcome it, please elaborate or just share. A minute to think for yourself, and then you will be paired. Find your vulnerability moment of the week, if it happened. I'm sure it happened. It's okay. It's okay. If you would just come in, I asked the rest of the group to think about their vulnerability moment they had during this week. If there was one, I'm sure there was. Still 30 seconds. Okay. Now please pair up and share your thoughts with your mate. Without the pair, you can join, you can go a group of 3. Come here. 1 minute. Okay, okay, let's bring it on. So now, please, guys, pair up your pairs in teams of 4. It will become 5, it's okay. And share all together. 2.5 minutes. 30 seconds.
I need to pick up two people from higher path because next bus is coming in an hour and one of them
You're
is
asking
a
the
credit.
car?
No. But if you have your key here, yes.
Yeah, I do. But you know that my car is. If you get stopped, it's gonna be a you. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Amazing. All right, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it here. Bring them here, Peko. Get them to me. All right. So, okay. If anybody feels like they have something they want to share with the whole the group, we've touched a very soft topic, so it's okay, whatever you feel like. But if there's some interesting point that came out, somebody wants to share, please.
Yeah, I always find it's a little vulnerable to put forward a session proposal, right? Like you have a very small window of time to communicate an idea that you're really interested in and excited about, and you have no idea who's gonna find that interesting or want to come. But yeah, that's always a vulnerable moment in the course of the event for me.
We were sharing that it feels vulnerable when you're confronted with sort of the limitations of your own knowledge and your capacity. And that, yeah. Because we all have different skill sets, and so I think, yeah.
It came out that there are many people that are very introvert, and so they struggle to socialize or to open up. I think that if you make it explicit, you will find a lot of people that are introvert as well. So don't fear.
Okay, thank you very much. I wish you a good morning.
So we can start. Thanks to today's sponsors, Power Protocol Q. Sorry, man. Because I was thinking Q protocol or Q project. I will just say Q. That's why I said Power Protocol. Powerpool, and we will now discover what's that about. Q and HoloChain, you have the program on the group, so we can start with Vasily.
Yes, so I sent the presentation to you. Could you assist me with the... Sure.
It's on YouTube. I can put it in a second. I can move the slides if you want. Or
I'd like
I prefer.
to be more comfortable here. Yeah, so hello everyone. So I'm Vasily, and today I want to talk with you about the DeFi automation. So it's quite interesting topic for different projects in this space. So I will present Powerpool. It's a decentralized automation network for DeFi, for ReFi, for any kind of Web3 sector that needs some automated executions of the smart contracts. So let's dig into what is on-chain automation, why Web3 needs this automation. So what is happening now? So the thing is that the first problem is that smart contracts don't execute themselves. So smart contract cannot trigger himself intrinsically. It's not possible in EVM compatible networks such as Ethereum, such as other networks, rollups, etc. So if you want to trigger some contract according to some condition, for example, call it once per 12 hours or call it if something happens on chain, you need to do it manually using your wallet, signing the transaction, calling this contract, executing it. So this is the first thing. The second thing is the user experience in Web3 in general, so how it worked before. User has the MetaMask, user has some other wallet, goes to the to some interface and interacted with the application himself all the time. So signing the transactions, for example, supplying the liquidity into Uniswap, making some trades, I don't know, making some other on-chain activity. So users did everything themselves. But like time passes and the DeFi and some, and other sectors, they are changing a lot, and they're changing into the paradigm when users do less and less actions themselves. So protocols do actions instead of users. It is how in our everyday life, right? So like maybe 100 years ago, we did much more actions ourselves. Now we have a lot of machines, a lot of automation, finally that cooks food, makes some other stuff. And here is almost the same paradigm in like entirely new high-tech environment. So today, if you want to use Uniswap v3, you use some Uniswap v3 position management protocol. If you want to buy something on DEX, you may use a limit orders that will make it automatically once the price will achieve some level. If you want to use some CDPs, collateralized debt positions for stable coins, you have some services for protecting you from liquidation and balancing your debt and collateral duration, and so on. So all the DeFi moves towards the paradigm when user do less and less and somebody does everything for user. So this is how this user experience will work, and it works now. So the first big DeFi protocol that benefit from very simple automation a lot was Earn Finance. Maybe they introduced the vaults concept back in 2020. So they did a big paradigm shift in all this space, making something automated, publicly available, and used by a lot of people. So this was the first step, and after that, this trend starting to grow. So and we think in Powerpool, and I think it's not a surprise that Web3 future is automated. So we expect that in 3 years, 40% of block space will be consumed by automation bots or automation networks or anything that will automate something for users. Why? So as I see, there is like 3 pieces on the timeline, right? So we have a past experience. It is a fully manual Web3 that was maybe in 2019, 2020, that days maybe early 2021. Now we are in the transition period, so a lot of actions are still manual. A lot of people still use services doing everything themselves. But at the same time, we have a lot of protocols and products that offer automated services to users and simplifying the experience. And in the future, we see that it will be like fully automated Web3 that like maybe 99% of simple actions will be automated. And now we have an account abstraction that simplifies the whole thing to automate something for the user. And we have some other reasons. For example, if you will see that the size of, of the data that you need to store for the Ethereum node, it grows, even with all the feature updates, including blobs, including vertical trees, including all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it grows. So, and node runners need some new sources of income for supporting the node operations. So currently, Ethereum Solana stakers, they have block reward, they have some fees, and they have MAV. And as we expect, a lot of validators will also install nodes that executing the transactions, and we'll get some additional surplus, some additional income from these execution fees, and this will greatly benefit the network because there will be more nodes, and these nodes will contribute to this all automation services, and if services will be automated, there will be much more simplified user experience, more not educated, not sophisticated users will enter the space, use protocols, use everything. So it's like a synergetic activity that finally comes down to that automation is good for Ethereum growth, for its decentralization, for acquiring new users that don't want to do a lot of manual actions and don't understand how to do it. So from different angles, this all is moving in one direction. So this is why we think that the Web3 future is automated. And this is also not only about the Ethereum mainnet, it's also about the rollups, about other layer 1, layer 2s, using at least the EVM stack, because the lower are fees in the network, the more is desired to automate something, because every action is very cheap. So you can make even vault harvesting every hour. You can reallocate DAO treasury to some recipients every hour, making fund streaming. So there are a lot of use cases that we will also discuss in the future in this lecture.
Sorry, can I ask you? Maybe it's not clear for everybody. What do you mean when you say that smart contracts are not automated? Or if you can do an example.
Yeah, I said that smart contracts don't execute themselves. The contract itself cannot execute himself. If you want to make some action with the contract, you need to trigger it from external wallet. So if you have, for example, a contract for ERC20 token, if you want to transfer token, you need to take external wallet and sign the transaction that move some amount of tokens from your wallet to other wallet, right? So the contract cannot execute himself. Some third-party agent, some other wallet should trigger this action. This is the main problem. And this is why all these automation bots, automation network appear. If contracts could do this, it will be the different architecture entirely. Also, I think that what I also want to add here, why automation bots are all, like some additional reason about this, like synergy with the network growth and future automation is the legal reasons. I'm not a lawyer, but I think we all understand that if, for example, you have a centralized bot that you launch it on your own, on your server, and this bot does some actions on chain, you're responsible for it. If you outsource this to an automation network that you provided a task, for example, to do something, and this network does it, it's not your responsibility probably. So, because if you will think about, so it's a very complicated question and I cannot answer it myself because I don't have enough knowledge about it. But what I understand, there is a big difference about who is doing what in Web3. Different jurisdictions, different law systems. So it's also a big topic, not for this lecture, but it's just for thinking about it. So there are some technical reasons why we think that 40% of block space will be consumed by automation networks in 3 years. It's just an assumption. Of course, it can go different, but at least I think that the usage of automation networks will significantly grow in the future. So, like some little background about the Powerpool. So we launched as a DAO with a fair launch without any VC funding in 2020, focused on creating baskets of tokens or so-called indices. So it was not a financial product, but just baskets of tokens built on top of Balancer that we modified, and our modification led to Balancer V2. So we inspired Balancer V2 architecture with some of our design decisions with these baskets. So we had a quite good community around the project, and Delphi Digital, Your Finance, Sushi, Ava, team members, they made some proposals on the forum, in the DAO, so we built some products together. And but the main cornerstone problem of the whole idea of these baskets was to make some automatic smart contract calls, because we need to make some staking of tokens from the basket to some other protocols, etc. So when we start to build it, we understood that we need a lot of automation under the hood to make it possible. And at that time, we cannot find any solution for making this reliable automation. So we launched our bots. We made our V1 version of Powerpool network. It was like under the hood. It was not the main product. It was not something that we worked a lot to get some adoption for it. So we mainly built DeFi. We got featured in Bankless and some big like information outlets because of these products. But what happened next, like in 2 years, we understood that our main strength, our main expertise is building some complex automation products, automated products. So for example, you can see the Bantek tweet. So we made I think the first meta wallet that relocates funds between Euro Finance wallets based on some on-chain conditions. So it was fully automated, funds relocation product. So finally we came up, okay, guys, we built some DeFi, we know how it works, we got a lot of knowledge, but what is main point that we got? We need to build reliable automation network, and there was no such solution on the market. Even in 2022, there was no truly centralized and permissionless automation network on the market. There were some networks with whitelisting, with some team approval to run a node, or some legal agreements. So I think it's very far away from permissionless and decentralized narrative. So, and we started to build our V2 of the automation network, and I will present how it works, what are the capabilities, and what you probably, if you have some project or a protocol that you're building, how you can benefit from it, how you can integrate it, get some solutions automated, etc. So this is Powerpool network. We call it Power Agent V2. Why Power Agent? Because there are agents that sign transactions, or keepers in simple terminology. So how it works, if you're a developer, you're building something, you need some automation, you need to deploy the contract with a function that should be called based on some time periods, an interval job, or based on some logic, like is it true or false, right? So is it possible to call this contract or not, to execute this task? It's like a resolver job. So you can add the job to the network. You can provide some Ethereum to it, so there is no any kind of tokens for payment, only Ethereum. If you're talking about Ethereum and rollups and BNB on BNB chain and Matic and Polygon, so only native tokens are used for payment for the gas and for payment for execution fees. So you add the new job. So after that, network can randomly assign keeper for execution of this job. You also can select a stake range, so the minimal and maximal stake of the keeper that will be eligible possibly to automate this job, because Powerpool is the only network on the market that has slashing and staking. And this moment, I mean, automatic slashing without multi-sig decisions, without all this, stuff. I mean, just fully automated slashing if keeper fail to make the execution. So, and if keeper executes the job in a proper and honest way, he will receive the reward, and the reward is a gas compensation plus some additional fee on top of that. That also is depending on stake sometimes. So, and if he didn't execute a job in a proper way, for example, some amount of blocks after the job should be executed, or some time, it depends on the type of the job and on some conditions, he can be slashed by another keeper that will slash him, get part of his stake, and also sign this transaction. So it's a network where keepers have responsibility for their no execution actions, because from my point of view, each automation task has a main metric is a cost of no execution. For example, if you have some kind of task that should be executed, but it wasn't executed finally, and you can lost some funds based off it, right? For example, you have a protocol that should, I don't know, make a treasury allocation, like in bread chain, for example, theoretically, like a theoretical example, the funds weren't allocated, some project didn't receive funds on time, this led to some problems. So no execution is bad, and we try to fight it, making the proper cryptoeconomic design and incentives. So here is the scheme. I will try to focus on it. So here we have a job. We have a Power Agent contract that stores all the jobs, and when you register keeper, the keeper information is also stored there. There is a signer set. Signer set is like several keepers that are eligible for job execution based on the stake range. For example, you can set up that from 1,000 tokens to 10K tokens, this stake range is eligible for execution, and the lower is not possible to execute. So they have some stakes, so keepers are assigned randomly using the random algorithm from Ethereum consensus. So it's, I think, probably the only genuine random in Ethereum. That is 100% random. So after the keeper is selected, he executes the task and receives the payment for the job. It's quite simple. So what kind of jobs you can possibly automate? So this is a selector job or job with predefined call data. So it means that for the selector job, you just have a contract and you need to call it, and that's it. And with predefined call data, you have a call data that you need to execute. So, and these two types of job are interval, so it means that they should be called every delta T, like 12 hours, 24 hours. So you can set this parameter yourself. It depends on the nature of the task, why and how you need this execution done. This is a simple type of job, and it's mainly words harvesting, some maybe TVAP Oracle calculation, or some routine tasks that are not so complicated. But if you need to automate something really complex, there is a job with the resolver. So it's an advanced type of job. You can make a whole algorithm that will check something on chain and make a decision. For example, as in this example, there is two variables, and if one variable is bigger than another one, you do this. If another variable is less, you do something else. So if these two variables are equal, you do nothing. So basically, this type of job also generates a call data that you need to execute, because the call data can be different depending on the outcome of the algorithm, right? So you have some algorithm, like a simple computer program that decides how and what keepers should do. So this job, so theoretically, jobs can create new jobs. They can fund themselves. So this is not theoretically, of course. So there can be a lot of possibilities, more complex than just automating some routine stuff here. So you can even make a job that will create a new job that will do something, or use some part of proceeds from some process to fund itself, pay for gas, etc. So you can make the whole living algorithm on chain that will be executable. So this is the main idea. So one of important thing in the keeper networks in general is, so you have a network of keepers, but the main question is how keepers are selected, who will receive a task, under what condition, and what will happen if keeper didn't execute task properly. So this is a big question, and so different projects solve it differently. So we did it in the following way. So all keepers have stakes in tokens, so that they provide a stake. It's locked for some time. So, and when the job owner set up the job, he can set up a range of stakes that are eligible for execution. So if keeper is inside the stake range, he can execute a job. Theoretically, if he will be selected based on the random algorithm. So now they're assigned equally. So it means that if you are inside the stake range, and even if your stake is different from another keeper, your probability to get a job is similar. It's simple random from some n keepers. In the nearest future, there will be stake weighting function. We publish the work, like academic work on it. We have it all done, so we are finalizing the development. So, and sorry. So if keeper is selected, then he should execute the job according to the conditions of the job. When he executed the job, he received the gas compensation according to the base fee and some additional fee on top of that. So this fee can depend on stake. So now it depends in the new version. So the bigger is the stake, the bigger is reward for the keeper, because so from the crypto economic point of view, it's quite logical. So the bigger is the keeper's stake, the bigger is his responsibility for no execution, right? He will be slashed, he will lose all the stake. But to motivate users and keepers to provide bigger stakes and get more risks to the position, we need to provide more income for them, because any risk should be balanced by possible reward. So, and this is why we have a stake multiplier. And for the job owner, who is a client of the network, it's quite important to get, so if he thinks that his job is really important, he wants to set up the higher responsibility for keeper, he should pay more. right? So for me, the easiest analogy, it's like a napkin analogy, is the post service. So you send a parcel, and if you think that your parcel is really important, you can pay some insurance, right, and get it covered for some like amount of money. If you think that your parcel is not so important, you can not pay insurance, but if it will be lost, nobody will be responsible, or their responsibility will be quite low. So it's the same. So if you have quite important job, for example, you need to protect make your DAO CDP from liquidation, and the liquidation penalty is 13%, so you deposit $1 million of Ethereum. Just imagine that this is a DAO, right? This is the DAO treasury, you deposit $1 million of Ethereum into the CDP in MakerDAO, you issued some DAI, you use this DAI in some way. But if Ethereum goes up, you can print more and more DAI. So this is a simple algorithm that can automatically add new debt, and the network will do it. Or if Ethereum goes down, you need to take out some DAI from the purpose of usage, burn it, and decrease the debt to not get liquidated. But if Keeper will miss the transaction and will not execute this strategy properly and not protect you from liquidation, you will lose the 13% of the stake in Ethereum. So it's like 130K. It's quite a big amount for the DAO, I think. So, and in this regard, I think the DAO should select like big stakes to have a big responsibility from Keeper of this no execution event. So to wrap it up, now it's a random Keeper selection. There will be also stake-weighted functions. So stake-weighted function will improve, like enhance the chance of being selected for Keeper whose stake is in not far away from the cost of no execution. So the idea is that Keeper's stake should be comparable with the cost of no execution. In this regard, Keeper wouldn't have any desire to no execute something. Because if you will think a little bit deeper, we can see that, for example, Keeper has tasks to protect position from the liquidation. But at the same time, Keeper could have a malicious behavior to specifically failure this protection to allow, for example, himself as an MAV bot to liquidate the position and get 130K, right? So it's always possible. If your network is permissionless and you don't whitelist Keepers and like checking them from some other point of view besides the cryptoeconomic incentives, it's always possible. So this is why this all is built. So here are 2 slides about how slashing works. So it's like more technical stuff, but I think I will try to explain it in simple words. So the thing is that making slashing fully on-chain without any governance, without any multi-sig, make it period automatically, it's not so easy task. So, and there are two mechanisms of slashing for Keepers, for interval jobs, for the simple task, and for the complicated task. It will be on the next slide. So here is a timeline of a typical process of the task. So do you have something to point out there? Sorry. Maybe it's some laser, or maybe I can do it manually. So yeah. Yeah, so at the previous execution, so let's imagine that there is some task that should be executed every, I don't know, 12 hours. So at previous execution, when it happened successfully, the new Keeper was assigned randomly at this point of time, at the previous execution. So then we have an execution timeout period. So this is time when the time is not passed and the execution cannot be done because 12 hours didn't pass. So here at 12 hours passed. So from this point of time, Keeper can execute the task because this period that was specified in the task was passed. So this is an execution period. So during this time, Keeper should execute the task. If he didn't execute before the red line, so at this red line, it means that his behavior was malicious, right? Because this was like legit time that he can execute. After this red line, he cannot execute. And slashing is allowed. So if he didn't execute, for example, like 1 minute or like 10 minutes, it depends on the task, of course. So it's different. He can be slashed. So this is a slashing period. So when the red line passed, the slasher, who is also selected by the network, currently it's selected by the round-robin algorithm, can slash him. So sign transaction instead of him, get part of his stake, and get the job done finally. But if slasher didn't slash him properly, so it also can happen. There can be some reasons when so you have a worker, you have a supervisor of the worker, and sometimes the supervisor of the worker also didn't, did it properly. There can be some technical reasons for that, of course. For example, his RPC was down. He didn't know that he needed to slash. So, this is working with real Ethereum nodes, with RPCs, with on-chain events. It's much more complicated than just some scheme on the slide. So, and if the job cannot be executed by the slasher, so it can be released, so set off from the execution, because, for example, there can be some technical problem in a job. So it also depends on a job. So this is a release period that keepers can put this job off the execution. So this is how the interval job slashing works. So we can dig it in deeper on questions. So slashing for resolver type of jobs is even more complicated. So the thing is that for resolver type of jobs, you have some algorithm inside the resolver. And the resolver is, in simple words, is an algorithm that answers two questions. First question is it possible to execute job now or not? Depending on the algorithm. For example, if Ethereum is below 2K, buy one Ethereum, like this job. If Ethereum is above 2K, according to some oracle, TVAP oracle from Uniswap, for example, you cannot execute the job because this resolver will receive that it's not true for execution. And the second thing that resolver will return is a call data. Because, for example, you can have more complicated task. If Ethereum is below 2K, buy one Ethereum is below 1,900K, 1,900, buy two Ethereum, for example. And this will be different call data, evidently, right? So, and in the resolver, you can add a lot of stuff. For example, you can add the calculation of the P number up to 1 million digit, which will consume much more than gas that is in block space of Ethereum, in the whole block, I mean. And this job cannot be executed at all. Or you can make some other things. So, or you can make a whitelisting in a job and say that, okay, only this address can execute the job. And of course, this address you can set up it for the zero address, right? Nobody can execute the job at all. And so there are a lot of such conditions and such, attacks on the system. So, but let's discuss the slashing for resolver. So, let's also go through the timeline. So, we also have a previous execution. So when the job was executed last time, the new keeper is assigned. Here is the execution timeout. This timeout is not set up in some time because if it is a job that has some logical condition, you never know when this condition happens, right? If you want to buy Ethereum below 2K, there can be a chance that Ethereum never will be below 2K in the future, right? Theoretically. So we are waiting here while the true flag will be received, so the job can be executed. And the keeper it always checks out the task and see is it true or false. When it is true, he received the true and call data, and he can execute. So this is the execution interval. The keeper legitimately can execute the task. If he didn't execute up to this yellow line, the slashing is initiated. So the slasher is prepared to slash him, but he didn't slash him yet. He's just preparing to do it. So he's calculating what he needs to execute, how he will slash, etc. So this is the slashing timeout. So it's also some amount of time that slasher waits for the keeper, that he provides him a chance to still provides him a chance to execute. In simple words, if until the red line keeper didn't execute the task, still the slasher can execute this task, slash the keeper, make this job done, etc., as in previous example. And if up to the purple line, slasher didn't slash the keeper, it means that there probably can be some malicious design of the job. So in the majority of cases, the probability that keeper and slasher wouldn't be able to execute the task because of their intention is quite low for the big number of keepers and slashers. So the main chance here to not slash properly is that the job has some malicious design or something like that, at least according to our experience last 3 months in testnet. So we tested a lot of stuff. And here is a release period for a job, where job can be set off from the execution or can be executed one more time. So there are some different possibilities of actions, what to do next after this. So So key features of this solution. So we built it for a long time. Its first feature, this is a really permissionless solution. So you can launch a node without any agreements, whitelist, anything. So you can buy minimal token stake, it's 1K of tokens, and just launch a node, or you can participate in testnet. You don't need to buy anything because all testnet participants will get tokens for free, of course, from the DAO, like node runner grants. So you can launch a node without any agreements with anyone. You can set up a task without any agreements for anyone easily. So it's fully permissionless system. So keepers are selected randomly, so no round robin, no any kind of algorithms when you can predict who will be the next keeper, because if you know who will be the next keeper, it also provides some attack vectors. So it's the same as in, for example, in blockchain network, you will exactly know who will be the next validator, right? So you can bribe him or he can make some manipulation. So the random selection is, from our point of view, is quite good from the for the crypto economic security. So the next thing is when we say about the full decentralization, we mean that this is scalable. So we can make thousands of nodes, and this will work with the random keeper selection, stake weighting. Because for the round robin algorithms, for example, and or for example, if you collect some signatures, the signatures collecting is not gas efficient at all for a large number of the nodes. The round robin, it's if you have a lot of nodes, it's quite complicated for them to get their place in the key finally to get some job. So round robin is, from our point of view, it can be like academic research discussion, not good algorithm for keeper selection at all, besides the fact that it's not random. So we also integrated a dApp node. We are big friends with dApp node, and probably a lot of people here know dApp node. So the thing is that we target Ethereum solo stakers. So we share value of Ethereum. We think that if you want to run a keeper node, you don't need to rely on centralized RPC. It makes no sense to run a decentralized keeper network and rely on centralized RPC that can be shut down by some reason, like Alchemy. Like, all these situations when centralized RPC went down, and there was a lot of problems. So we integrated with dApp node, the package, all is inside. So now it's a spoiler testnet. I will share more information about it. So the idea is that if you run a solo staker validator in dApp node, you can launch Powerpool, Power Agent on top of it and earn execution fees. In Ethereum, if you have a Matic node or Gnosis chain node, you can do it as well, get execution fees. So you don't need to spend any additional cost because you're already running a node, right? So you already did all these preparations. You're using, some disk space, some internet connection that you paid for, and like you're launching it on top of it. It's quite little cost to run a keeper node on top of it, but you can get additional income, and we think that it improves the returns of validators, and this is good. So the guaranteed execution at this moment, for our knowledge, this is the only network with real slashing, with fully automated slashing on the market. So if you set up a task and you assign the big stakes for the keepers and keeper didn't execute the job, he will be slashed. So it's a responsibility because, for example, some protocols try to solve the automation task. They said, okay, we will make some incentive and anyone permissionless can call this and execute the task. And this is true for liquidations where this incentive is like 10% in liquidity, 13% in MakerDAO, right? But if it is some technical little routine operation under the hood and you pay 0.1, 0.2% from the capital, for example, that is reallocated in the task, nobody is responsible for it. So I know a lot of projects that did this. They even did a button click for the community that can sign and update something in the system, and nobody clicks it, even for some little reward. So for some liquidations, keeper networks are not suitable, of course. But for some routine operations or for some personal stuff, or for some DAO treasury management, so for any kind of task where the responsibility is important and you cannot provide huge incentives like 10% of all the value or inside the task, the keeper network is a perfect match. So we also have a stake-based pricing, as I said before. So if you want more responsibility from keepers, you need to pay more. If you don't need a lot of responsibility, you can do it really cheap. For example, vaults harvesting, it doesn't depend, is the task automated now or in 1 hour? Basically, you wouldn't, so you don't have any financial risk in this task, for example. So we have 2 upcoming features, and I think this is a very important one. So one feature is ZK resolvers. So the thing is that we talked about resolvers that are on-chain. On-chain means that everybody knows your algorithm, right? So what you do, how you do, and what will be the outcome. But sometimes there is a necessity to make some algorithm that nobody knows, but you can prove that you use this algorithm, or this algorithm was continuously used over the year. For example, so I speaking with some projects, for example, they have some trading strategy, right? But if everybody will know the trading strategy, they will be front run. It's evident, right? So you can make it like an off-chain computation and prove it on-chain. Without ZK resolvers, there is also a possibility to make some off-chain computations, but it will be entirely like in centralized way. As I know, it's stored in IPFS in some networks. So here there are like several value propositions from these ZK resolvers. First is that you can make some tasks that are executed in fully centralized regime by the decentralized network, but not expose this task details to anyone. The second is you have some heavy off-chain computations. For example, you need to relocate funds across 35 walls, like some yield generation options. So to make it efficiently, you need to solve matrix of linear equation 35 per 35. I think nobody wants to solve this matrix on chain. It will be too expensive, but using the ZK resolvers, you can solve it, you can prove that it was solved correctly, you can relocate funds and do it in a proper way. So this is, I think, the big step forward for Keeper networks in general. And the second thing is MAV protection. Of course, the flash bots, integration, etc. is quite simple solution, and we also use this even in past. But now we are talking with some projects, with some DAOs. For example, somebody moves $50 million of Uniswap v3 position in the big pool, right? And the front run, and it can be very expensive. And there are a lot of risk of this Uniswap v3 position movement. So I talked with some sophisticated guys from MIV space, and I understand that I don't understand anything because it's much more complicated that even I read a lot of stuff on it. I will be honest, right? But the thing is that there should be a low latency RPCs, like blocks route, all this kind of solutions. So it's also very interesting stuff. So we are integrating some additional measures to protect some tasks from MIV, because I think it's very important to onboard more high value tasks to the network. So this is the next big milestone for Powerpool. So there is a DAO. This is was approved by the DAO, all the tokens for the grants. So the DAO decided to provide builder grants, node runner grants, contributor grants, bug bounties, etc. So we will be happy to provide grants to any projects that are focused on some good stuff that requires some automation, integration, support these projects, etc. It's all done by the DAO decision, so it's like a proposal on the forum, on-chain governance, all this kind of stuff. So, but the DAO approved 10% of the total token supply for the grants. So this is all in tokens, of course. As I said before, Powerpool didn't attract any VC funding. There was no VC investors, no rounds, nothing like that. So this is tokens, but they're liquid. So if somebody is interested, let's discuss some grants, make proposals, push it to the DAO, so discuss. So I will be happy to support anyone who needs some automation or integration. The bread chain was quite a good example. If some of your projects in ecosystem will need some automation, you can provide grants, integrate with Powerpool them. So thank you guys. If you want to apply for a grant, there's a forum, but of course you can just talk with me and I will provide all the insights, how to do it in a proper way. If you want to go to the website, find more about the Power Agent, participate in testnet, run a node, so do everything you want. So we have, mainly for the community, we have two things. We have testnet with node runner grants, with the possibility to run a node in Sepolia, set up tasks, test stuff, etc. And we soon go into the Gnosis chain. We are going to Gnosis chain because it has the same consensus as in Ethereum, so we have the same source of randomness in the consensus. But at the same time, Gnosis chain is low-fee environment where you can test a lot of stuff, complex strategies, almost without any costs, which is good for testing, right? And after everything will be properly tested on Gnosis chain, we're going to Ethereum, after that to rollups, etc. So across all the networks where some automation use cases, because Powerpool is easily replicable on any network. So for networks that doesn't have Ethereum consensus, we have our RNDAO implementation, so it's also solvable, of course. So thank you, guys. if you have some questions.
I will go first because I have a mic here. No, just as a question, I was thinking if you do some kind of work in terms of community, or how do you manage the social cultural dimension of your protocol and project, despite being, I mean, given that it's so technical, no? Okay, I imagine that it's mostly technical discussions or technical problems to be solved, but do you also have something to share in terms of the people behind the Powerpool or something like that?
Sorry, what is the question? I don't understand.
If you have any comment regarding the organization Powerpool, and how do you manage a community, or if you have some kind of discussion on culture and so on?
Yeah, so at the moment, like we have a quite big testnet group, more than 60 developers, and some of them even run all the testnet stuff without rewards. What I really appreciate, and this was the case that I shared, that people, if you don't pay them directly, they even have sometimes bigger motivation to do some cool stuff than when you provide rewards. So when we start to provide rewards for the testnet, we got a lot of these airdrop hunters, bug hunters, I don't know, guys that try to just run a node, get tokens, sell them right away. And when I saw some information in chat that, hey guys, there's a Powerpool, you can easily get $700 as a grant for running a node and sell it right away because it listed on some exchanges and has liquidity. I will send you a guide how to run a node and get this money. I said, oh my God, I don't want to participate in this anymore, because that was just a pity for me that people just want to get some tokens, sell them away, and they don't want to contribute to the project. But we found a quite good, just guys from the first testers who said, we will invite some people from our community who are more legit, who want to do something, not just because of token selling. So we said, oh, okay, let's help us with that. So they helped us a lot, because we are mainly developers and researchers. I'm not experienced in running testnet, for example. I never did it in my life before. So we have a research team that handles an academic research, all the competitors, like exploration, all the new stuff in the space, MIV, some other things, because there are quite a lot of innovation in MIV, also in ZK, in this kind of stuff. We have a technical team, we have a community team, and we have some DAO organizers who help to manage some proposals, some stuff with this. So, and a couple of BDs who help us with the conferences. So this is how it works.
Possibly you said, and I missed it. I was wondering if you have any checks on the registration process to prevent a powerful entity from just registering loads of keepers to skew the network?
The registration, checks?
Like a sort of Sybil resistance, anything to prevent a single entity from taking a disproportionate share of the network.
So if you want to get a disproportionate share of the network, you can, if you create a new keeper, you need to provide a stake, lock it for 60 days. So the minimal stake is 1,000 tokens. It's not so big, it's like $300 at this moment, but for the majority of tasks, users, I think, will decide to put the minimal stake much higher, because the responsibility of $300 is not suitable for the majority of on-chain tasks if they're not routine without any risk. So you can make, I don't know, 1,000 of keepers, but you need to run 1,000 of nodes, of Ethereum nodes, or you need to put them on the whole on one RPC. So you can try to run 10 nodes in a row, and it will be complicated. You need to also get tokens for each of them. So if you want to run 1,000 of nodes, you need to buy 1 million of tokens, because 1,000 of tokens is a minimal stake in the network. So it can be changed by the governance in the future. So it means that you need to buy 1% of the whole network of tokens. I think it's not so cheap. And so it all depends, and the network. So if you have 1,000 of keepers with minimal stakes, you cannot do anything in the network besides getting the tasks, like some simple tasks that people decided that 1,000 stake is okay for that. So it is not like a consensus in blockchain where you can influence like block creation or something like that. So, and it also will be expensive, of course.
Could I think of Keeper as like a peer-to-peer network that's running on top of Ethereum that's meant to do off-chain calculations or to almost search for functions that become available to run? Like, is that an appropriate like kind of way to think about it?
Yes, I think that this, so what you mentioned is like a subset of what Keeper can do. So Keeper can make off-chain computations and prove them on-chain. Keeper can execute on-chain tasks as well.
So then that includes, like, for example, I'm just thinking of, I know like Unlock Protocol they have a certain system where they allow for, like they do a lot of like token gating for like subscriptions. So you can they have a system where, you know, you would be rewarded for example, you have a 30-day renewal for NFTs, but like you have to put your extra, even if you put your extra, you know, tokens that you're doing to pay for the subscription, you need it to be run. Like you need the subscription to run every 30 days manually. The idea was to like make a system so that anybody is allowed to run the subscription or something like that. Is that like kind of the?
It can be a case, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it also depends how you will. So you can make this a contract that can be, you know, executed. You can make it via the account abstraction, for example, as well. The account abstraction is quite a good case for keepers for the future. So you can make an account that a keeper can take some funds from it every month based on some conditions, but only these conditions and not do anything else, for example.
Right. So then, are there any examples that come to your mind specifically? I don't know, because a lot of them are finance related. Do you have any in your mind that are like commons related specifically, like how a commons may want to use automation in this type of system?
Yeah, I think that the easiest way is on-chain governance. For example, you made some, you know, snapshot voting. This is like an off-chain data, but a trusted one probably, and the Keeper network can see the outcome of the voting and implement on-chain this, you know, decision. For example, allocate funds from the DAO treasury to some other address of some, you know, project or person or something else. So if you have a lot of votings, it can be done automatically. You don't need to go to the multisig, set up the multisig transaction, do it all the time. It's
so it's a way. So then it's also a bridge from off-chain to on-chain.
But for example, your project, yeah, it can be a bridge from off-chain to on-chain with some restrictions, of course, because you need to have a trusted data. You need to have the ZKP, for example, if you need to have some calculations. But for example, in your project, you deposit DAI in Aave, you issue the bread. People use bread outside, right, of this like Aave thing. But sometimes you need to, as I understand, you want to redeem your C DAI, or sorry, A DAI. You need to redeem your A DAI. So for example, you deposit 1K of DAI, and after, you know, some time you get 1K and 10 DAI. Let's imagine that gas is almost zero, to not calculate it. So you redeem your A DAI, get 1,010 DAI, right? What do you need to do? You need to transfer this 10 DAI to your DAO treasury, and you need to deposit your 1K of DAI back, or just to redeem the share of this A DAI to get this 10 DAI. So you need to take out this income, the interest rate income that you got, and deposit it to the DAO treasury, right? For example, every 1 day or every 2 days. Who will do it? The multisig, or you can just set up a task and it will be done all the time automatically.
Yeah, for that, at the moment we have it to where anybody can claim it. We're trying to make it as like an interactive thing that anybody can sort of like contribute in some way like that. But I think there is maybe something to say about when we receive the A DAI, then we may want to turn that into, we want to automatically reinvest it into bread.
Yeah, yeah. So, but what I propose in this regard, I think this is a very good question about the automation and commons, because you can even see that when I started this, sorry, not loads. When I started this talk, it was a decentralized automation network for DeFi, but I'm talking about the Web3. So this narrative is greatly expanded and is not limited to DeFi at all. So, and what I propose, if there's interest to that from the community, from you, for example, from other guys, maybe we can make like some kind of a session for the 30 minutes, just drink coffee and discuss the possible automation use cases for commons. Because for me, it's not so explored area at the moment, and I want to see, because what we want to do next in Powerpool, one of our roadmap points that is what's not listed here, is to make some templates for tasks. Some templates that you can easily like run it even maybe without code experience, just go to the UI, like to the interface, set up, for example, call this contract, reinvest the DAI, like do this, like the website building when you don't know the HTML. The same kind of thing for people, because I think that to set up simple tasks, you don't need to know Solidity at all. So, and maybe we can get some good ideas for templates, some basic templates that can help commons to be automated, to work more efficiently and less rely on multi-sigs all the time.
Is there anything that prevents from people, if I understood correctly, people submit tasks? Is there anything that prevents them from submitting ambiguous tasks? That
at this point of moment, no, but it's a very good question, because we all know the Tornado Cash case, and I think we don't want to get a Tornado Cash like task that will deposit money in Tornado Cash all the time to be listed in the network, not because we want to censor something, but we just don't want, because the keeper that did it, he will be sanctioned after that, theoretically. As I understand, I'm not a lawyer, but there is some risk, and this guy can go to prison. I don't know how it works, guys, but it works. So it's a very good question. We need to think about it. So I don't have any particular solution for now, but probably DAO can make a governance proposal and blacklist some evident. So because you have two possibilities. You have possibility to die at all, or you have possibility to survive, right? So for example, if the one interaction with the Tornado Cash contract will lead that, some prosecutors from the United States will capture everybody to prison, I think it's maybe not a good decision, right? So I don't know. I'm a person with the decentralized and permissionless nature in mind. I don't want to censor anything. I think it should work how it works, but I don't know what to do with these things. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have an answer to this question right now. Thank you, guys.
Sorry for the pressure. We just have a lot of. We have pairwise now, then queue, then coffee break, then holochain, then common sub-validator node, and then the morning is finished. So let's stay on time. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay, you can present yourself. We met at Givet House when I was staying there some days, and he was like, "You should come to CCG." I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, New York.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Okay. Yeah, I want to be grateful for this opportunity we all have here to share and learn and grow. Oh,
sounds like this.
That's the end.
Well, thank you.
So I'll be talking about pairwise, simplifying choices and amplifying voices to have a very democratic digital democracy. So the problem we're having in DAOs, it's fatigue. They don't want to vote all the time. It's hard to get their signaling. So we have these three main problems. Voting fatigue. It means like people is voting constantly and they just get tired. The other problem is voting apathy, and this leads because there's a lot of forum posts, a lot of things going on Discord. It's very challenging for people to signaling what they want, and they end up voting with the majority or by the default or someone they trust, and then they just delegate their choices. So if we want digital democracy, we need to improve those systems. And when we all here are creating some way or another, we're shaping the future. And when we're doing that, we need to think about Godhart's law. When a when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. What it essentially means is if we create a system that can be gamified, it will be gamified. So we need to have that in mind. Some example, I was hanging out in the OneHive community when we implemented SourceCred, and we have these interactions on Discord. So people were just putting memes or doing things just to get the rewards. So when we create those tools, we need to think about those things. How pairwise works? It's very simple. There is 2 prompts. You can choose one, the other, or you can also abstain. The way it works, the algorithm behind it works very similar to the ELO system. It's being used in games, also in chess. So what it does is when you're comparing your project with another project that have higher ELO, if you win that match, then you get more points comparatively, and if you lose, you lose less. And the other way around, when you are facing someone with more points and you win more. And I say the same thing. Sorry. Yeah, and the reason we use comparison instead of Tinder style yes, no, it's because comparing, it's much easier to get decisions. If I say, we're here in the Crypto Commons, we have this budget, we should use it for fireworks. Maybe everyone's excited, fireworks are great. But if you're comparing it, you want fireworks or you want food, maybe you prefer food. So that's why we compare ideas, projects, or anything instead of choosing one or the other. So Pairwise is designed to be user-friendly and intuitive, promote greater community engagement in DAOs, and it has many use cases. Right now we're kind of working with Optimism for it's an experiment, but for distributing grants, maybe Pairwise can be useful, so we're building and experimenting with that. It's very good for ranked choice voting, but with better UX. It's also like I've been thinking about NFTs, and if a community of NFTs just engage, and which NFT is the cutest, which NFT, whatever feature you wanna add, this will bring market value to that NFT just because people like it. But Pairwise is not a one-trick pony. People might find new ways to use it that we are not aware right now because we're just building this tool. So when you finalize voting on Pairwise, this is somehow like the results page. Right now it's static, but the idea is like you can edit this at the same time. Like the algorithm gives you the results, but then you can also unedit them. And you can use those results in 3 different ways. You can, winner takes it all. So that means whoever's in the top just wins. It's ranked choice voting when you are selecting a president. So you get the winner. It also can be used for ordered list when you are selecting a committee, for example, or also when you have a limited budget and you want to make sure those projects have all the funding. So when you use ordered list, you give all the funding to the first one, and then you go down the list until the budget is gone. And weighted list is you just giving each project the percentage. This is very good for grants because everyone is, especially for retroactive grants, and people get the percentage of what the whole collective decided they should get. What we can do with Pairwise right now it's on alpha stage. So we basically can create a community, add options and questions. When we say the options, like the parameterization, if you want the data to be more stabilized or more dynamic. Add questions is, what you're comparing, adding the projects. The idea is what I was saying before, having an extremely simple UX, and it supports multi-chain. And in Pairwise, General Magic, we believe in the power of collaboration. So Pairwise is very similar to Snapshot. but they have like a different type of UX. So, you know, if Snapshot decides to integrate pairwise in the platform, we will be thrilled to that. But even if they, you know, if they don't want to, we can also like build and integrate Snapshot in another platform. And the reason is, oh, thank you. So kind. And the reason pairwise shouldn't be used for every decision is sometimes you need to have this super forum post and then yes or no. But in some cases, we want to use pairwise. And in DAOs, we don't need, you know, a snapshot over there, pairwise over here. You know, so many tools, it makes it so hard. That's why we want either Snapshot to implement pairwise or we have a platform with all inside. And yeah, right now we are creating this proposal with Optimism. The way they were facing a problem on the last grant for RetroBGF2, where batch holders were there having like a list of 196 projects, I guess it was. And they had to, to give a percentage to every project. So that's very hard. Like imagine yourself having 196 projects and say like 1%, 2%, 0.1, it's very complicated. So we're integrating pairwise there, but at the same time, we also move one step ahead. Because this time was only 196 projects, but for RetroBGF3, there might be thousands, we don't know. So we're creating a game where people start in the sun and they've been asked, the batch holders are being asked, what is their expertise? So people will be signaling, oh, I'm better at core development, I'm better at UX or governance. And then this way we have all the data of which people is expert on. And on the other side, we should, I didn't mention, like all those planets are collections of projects of the expertise. For example, governance projects. So Agora will be there, Snapshot will be there, pairwise will be there, and then all of those shape a collection. And the second question is, you start allocating budget to all those collections. So and then when you start the game, you start voting where your expertise relies first. So if you say your governance, your expertise first is on governance projects, you start voting on governance projects, even if before you allocated the budget. For example, I could think that we want a bigger budget for core development than for governance tooling for this period. So I allocated that budget, but in the game, since core development is my last expertise, probably I will not be voting because of lack of time, mostly, so, and lack of expertise as well. So what will happen is the 20% of the budget that I allocated to core development will be averaged by the experts. If, for example, in this crowd, 10 people voted on core development, but I didn't, my vote will be the average of those 10. And this is what we're building for Optimism to solve that problem. But pairwise is not Optimism. We also have like our own roadmap. Also, the original mechanism of the algorithm made by Colony, so big praise for Aaron, Daniel, and Griffin. And also big praise for the General Magic team for building that super cool tool. And you can test it out at pairwise.generalmagic.io. But going back to the algorithm page, I was mentioning it kind of works like the Elo system because I personally don't fully understand the math, but if anyone wants to check it out, there's the math. And then for the pairwise roadmap, right now we're just focusing on the platform. Because right now it's a bit buggy. We want to make it like a very nice experience for users. On milestone 2, we want to integrate especially weighted voting, because when you're voting on your community, not everyone's decision in some cases might be the same. Like DAOs got tokens, and those tokens, skin in the game matters. So we want to integrate Snapshot. But also there is also the option, like right now, it's the option of one person, one vote. For milestone 3, we want to make it decentralized. right now, like all the data is on general magic servers. So the idea is, it's on ePFS, our wave, I don't know yet, but the idea is like to make it decentralized. And then this one might be a bit controversial, but incentivized voting. We want to create a feature for people to incentivize voting. Maybe people might like it, people might not. Think of Gotthard's law. When you're using the incentivized. And for Milestone 5, it's what I was saying before. The idea is either if, integrated it with Snapshot or make it like our own app where we have like all the strategies in one platform. So if you want to learn more about Pairwise, you can reach out to us at General Magic. You can also reach me out here. And, for people watching online, you can find me on Twitter or Telegram at SeptimusQ. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. So I personally used Snapshot a lot over the last years, and I used on-chain governance. So I have two questions. So first, how do you see the particular example of incentivized voting?
Sorry?
How do you see the particular example of incentivized voting when the governance participation is incentivized by some tokens or some payments? So the particular case, how it could work. This is the first case. The first question. Second question is just a general question. How do you see the user acquisition for the platform? For example, in Powerpool, we widely use Snapshot. So, for example, how can we use Pairwise? Do we need to change something in our experience or not? So, how it works?
To answer the first question, incentivized voting. This is challenging, and we want to create a feature where people can get rewarded by just voting, and then having a vote, and then people but that's a decision by the DAO, not by Pairwise. We just want to create the feature.
But do you know the only example of really successful incentivized voting?
Oh.
Bribes and Curve, really successful incentivized voting.
I know
a lot of participation.
Shapeshifts are doing, and their community is being engaged. So
yeah.
But
maybe it's not a good example for real commons. I mean, the bribery and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean the idea is just have it there. I know it was going to be a bit controversial, incentivized voting. It's just a feature. People, in the commons, you might not want to use it, and that's fair. It's a feature.
Yeah.
And the second question was about like the acquisition, like the idea. We're still like shaping that. Like the idea, if Snapshot decides to integrate with us, and we're working with them, that'd be awesome. And then for users, it's way more easier. But if not, it's just like the idea is also export all the data of Snapshot, and then just the only difference for you would be go on a different URL. So it's like a seamless transition. Yeah.
I'm a person that has the opinion that not everyone should have the same amount of voting. Depending on what is the class of voting that we are talking about. There are certain classes, okay, we're all equal, but there are certain things in which requires more expertise that maybe if I have 2 votes and you have 1, it's fairer and more purposeful for the system. And then I'm also wondering about the quality of voting, despite if the votes are equal or not, because I'm also depending on what we want to decide on. It may be cool that we aggregate as many signals as possible from the community, but maybe just let's everybody vote. You will be only voting for the trend and not for the more quality option. Okay, so I'm just trying to put like a lot of complexity in the thoughts around voting, around the different classes of voting there, just to ask my question, in which is, what do you think is the voting case fit for for pairwise? I mean, what are those classes of votes? So we're talking, for example, you talked before about grants.
Yeah, for creation is perfect.
Yeah, but for tokenomic design, for example, what are those examples that you think praise will be amazing? But I'm also asking for examples or where you will say, no, please don't use pairwise because...
Oh, yeah, you should never use pairwise if you have like an important decision and it's a yes or no vote. Like, it's very simple, like either yes or no. You don't want to use pairwise for that. Pairwise is when you have so much data. When you have so much data that your brain cannot manage it, pairwise makes like simple decisions. Like, because instead of analyzing all of them, you're just focusing on two at a time, and divide and conquer.
And how do you keep the voting engagement on actually people that are caring about the project and they are just not, oh, I'm bored in my toilet, instead of playing with Tinder, I will play with pairwise, because it seems like that at the end of the day.
The idea is, but that way people is signaling what they want, even if they are just playing. And, you can use the tool as the way you want. You can use the tool just for community signaling and then have the committee having decisions. The tool is there just to gather data, and you can use it as well for decisions.
We're thinking of using pairwise or something like that for proposals of things to do in the hub with a Solarpunk mid-journey tone. So you like all the proposals and you have this or that, and you say that, this or that, yeah. this or that, and it will be super cool. And then you vote, and the winner proposal get
that.
Yeah, it's a super cool mechanism. It sounds like it's kind of like an alternative or a complement to like quadratic funding, Gitcoin rounds. It's like a different way of deciding between lots of projects, right? I'm thinking it could be really cool for refi local nodes across the globe. How do we decide which ones kind of get funding? But one question would be as a complement to the Gitcoin round that we have, because you could kind of do both, right? And then aggregate both of those signals that give slightly different focuses. But yeah, my question would be like, how do you do like Sybil resistance then? And because you could also like have loads of people from one project coming in and just only voting for their project. And so like, you have to quite manage who's allowed into the voting and also if they're actually real humans or not, right?
Yeah, we are not focusing on that part ourselves. For example, in Optimism, what they are doing is only citizens vote. So, and they are doing one person, one vote. So each citizen, it's the same power, but it's at the end of the day, it's Optimism decides who is voting and who doesn't.
I have another one. Yeah, it's just regarding the algorithm. How can we be sure that the algorithm is not hacked just to show a specific kind of pairs that you can actually influence the voting of the voter?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not that technical. But the idea behind pairwise works kind of like the ELO system I said before. So when you're comparing a project, at the beginning, both start with 1,000 ELO, but then when someone is already compared lose, then I'm facing a new one with 1,000.
Facebook start like that, and there's a lot of psychology behind that shit. I don't know how they can influence on you too. Okay. Who? No one? Next. Coffee. So.
Thank you. Okay, now we have Q. How would you say Q protocol, Q project?
Q.
Only Q.
Q blockchain, Q protocol.
Q blockchain, okay.
Whatever
Which Felix met in Paris, and we are very excited because you're a project that is focusing on the
decentralized governance.
Yeah,
as the infrastructure.
On the non-technical aspects of governance, let's say, the ones that you need to have
Yeah, we're focusing on a lot of different things,
Yeah.
non-technical
You tell us,
and
but,
technical. So,
we-
first of all, thank you guys for being here. We're gonna have a coffee break soon, so looking forward to see you there. But before that, let's talk about it with more Q governance and how do we do it. It's loading. Yeah.
Just a second.
I prefer slides than just talking, you know. Yeah, seems to be working. Okay, so my name is Dino. I'm working for Q Development AG. That's the operating hand for Q Protocol. So today, before we enter Q, I want to talk about something that I encounter while traveling the world when I'm talking to a lot of DAOs. And what I've seen is that people tend to be afraid of the word rule. So nobody wants to be ruled. They have bad examples of that in the history. So the rule has a bad connotation to it. So I'm going to try to make sense of why it's not so bad and why it has very positives to it. So in blockchain, what Web3 gave us, it gave us the freedom and the opportunity. It gave us the freedom to create our own little worlds in the way it was not possible before. So these freedoms, it's beautiful. Everybody likes it. Everybody wants to be their own master of their choices. So the only question there is, do we know how to do it? The freedom has its own dangers of it. We have been locked in the systems with the rules that we don't know how to live without them, in a sense. For example, if we go to live in the wilderness, maybe not everybody will survive because it's free, but the question is, do we have the know-how? So without rules, for example, I'm talking about people who are against the constitutions in governance mechanisms. So social contracts that tends to break. If we have a DAO here, if we agree on something, some people might interpret some decisions differently because we are emotional beings. So what constitutions gave us is specific rules that can be on-chained. And that's what I'm talking about here. So if we don't have rules, it's very difficult to progress. And if we don't have rules that are on constitution, it can eventually lead to chaos, as we have many, many examples of that. So freedoms can be dangerous, and we have to learn how to avoid those dangers. So what the rules of the games can do for us as well. They can be fun. For example, we have rules in everything. We have rules on laws of thermodynamics, gravity, even something less important as a football field, a game. So a game itself is a set of rules. I don't want to play a game if somebody can take a ball and run 2 kilometers away. I want to have a border so I know that this is my playground. I know what are the rules for it. I know how to set up, and I know how to train for that position. So I have motivation when I have rules. What else I need? I need safety. So if I'm playing a football game, I don't want to be in danger that somebody is trying to, kill me or something. So we have a referee, and that person is not motivated to hurt me in any way. So I have motivation and I have safety. So that is the two things that I need to be motivated to proceed with anything, not just football games. But that's just one example. So when we came from Web 1 to Web 2, it was a massive progress. We onboarded our moms and dads to platforms that were really difficult to onboard, but now it's common knowledge. They're using games on their phones, apps, even banking applications for all kinds of stuff. But today, we also want to do is to onboard them to Web 3, or where's the mass adoption? Like, we did this progress very quickly, effortlessly, but how does this progress from Web 2 to Web 3 happen? So I believe it goes back to a football game where they are having a lack of rules or lack of trust, and that is what motivates people to move forward. You all know these guys. I didn't mention the title of this. Some of people would say, I don't know, scams, but let's call bad apples. So what does the bad apples have in common? Well, apparently not only collapsed, not only collapsed, but one thing we have to understand here, in all of these cases, no code was broken. No mechanism failed. What failed is bad governance, bad constitutions, bad rules, no transparency in those. That is what we need. We need trust, and when we have that, when we have good constitution, transparent governance mechanisms, these things kind of don't have the way to operate and then to fail. So that leads us to these faces that I like to see. To me, these faces are the faces of people when sometimes I talk to our non-crypto people. When you try to explain why blockchain, why this is interesting to them, and you get a lot of these. And these guys are missing trust, and they're missing motivation. Some people will say, well, how do we get to mass adoption? It's about education. They need to be educated. We need to educate them. Well, kind of. We also use electricity today, but not all people, understand how it works. But what it does, it solves their issues, and it gives them trust that they're not going to be electrocuted, so they're not going to die, and they have safety. So these people not only need education, they need safety and motivation. So a lot of projects are trying to provide, to solve the issues of many people, but I'm trying to say here, let's also try to put in the governance mechanisms that people can trust. That's how we get them to mass adopt. So blockchain and governance. We have something that we like to call code is law. So everything that is coded will happen, self-govern, and be self-executed. That's a phenomenal way to do things. But the question we have to ask ourselves, what if not everything can be coded? There are a lot of code is law purists, maybe even here, and I understand that. But we need to understand what are the limitations of the code, and if we do have some limitations, can people actually exploit those limitations? And for example, we can see what academia has to say about it. So we have Professor Oliver Hart from Harvard. So he is the Nobel Prize winner from 2016. So he did some awesome things for incomplete contracts, which basically says that you cannot understand what future holds, and you cannot know the unknown unknowns. He mathematically proved that you cannot foresee all the versions of the future. So, which pretty much means that not everything could be coded, and we should really, and not only that, we don't know what to do with those futures if we don't know what's going to happen in the futures. So let's, try back. First what? Yeah, it's not, yeah. No, I'm English only. So maybe you have heard about the term beyond code is law. What that basically means is let's put another layer of trust on top of the code. So let's put human layer on top of the code. Well, some people will say, well, is it centralized? Can we do it decentralized way? Well, that's why I'm here today. We have proof from the real world that this does actually work. For example, I flew in by plane, and how does that work? Well, the pilot, most of the time he doesn't do anything. It's on the autopilot, right? And he's monitoring the code. So he's a human layer on top of the code that's running, governing itself. And if something happens wrong that could not be coded or nobody thought about it because we cannot foresee all the versions of the future, the human layer beyond the code is monitoring that. It's very important because human lives depends on it. And why not have it in a blockchain where potentially human financials are depending on it? So this is the term that we're gonna talk about a little bit later, and how do we deal with it in Q. But for any DAO, for any decentralized project, there are usually three things that needs to be happening to have effective governance. That's transparent rule setting, the constitution that I spoke about in the beginning. But without effective execution of those rules, the constitution doesn't mean anything. So you need to have rules, and you need to have something that you can execute those rules with. So you need to have effective execution mechanism. And on top of that, the third thing is dispute resolution mechanism if somebody is not very happy about how you executed those rules. So this is the three things, what we call the Trinity of governance. So let's talk about bad examples that happened in the past that did not have this Trinity of governance that I'm talking about, and why it's important and how we can negate them. I'm not gonna go into all the details, but let's talk about very briefly about them. Mango DAO hack. What happened is pretty much a guy stole, he drained the treasury of a DAO through techniques of its own. And it was a big uproar. People wanted to sue him, and he said, well, why not vote for it? So he made a proposal, and he said, everything I did was not wrong, you cannot sue me, let's vote for it. And he had the majority of the tokens, he voted for it, and it passed. So nobody could talk about that before. Well, you don't want, remember the phases that we were talking about, you don't want those people to try them to explain like these things can happen, No, you don't want that for mass adoption. UkiDAO case. Does somebody knows here the UkiDAO case? So what happened is, it's more about jurisdiction and laws. The guy, it's always a guy, the guy sued his own DAO for millions of dollars, and the case landed up in California to a Californian judge. And what happened is the judge was probably 1 year away from retirement. He doesn't know what he's looking at, and how do you put a DAO into his set of boxes that he has to do? So what he did is he put it under the partnership role. That's not the best way to judge on the DAO, and what also, he probably hates blockchain. He doesn't understand what it is. And I'm not going to talk about was it the DAO's right or the guy's right. It's about the jurisdiction, and did it have a fair trial? So when you go to a trial for a DAO or anything, the first thing you want to do is to ensure that the guy that's making the decision for you knows what he's looking at. So you need to have a fair trial by experts in these fields, and not just people who are there for whatever the reasons. That could also be negated with Trinity of governance. The third thing is arbitrum drama. So the question there was, well, the core team members did something that the community was not very happy, or did not vote, or there was a distinct what DAO community wanted and what core team members did. So the question is, what's the purpose of the DAO? So all of these things could not happen if they made a solid foundations with the right governance layers and solutions. And probably I have to click this one, right? So this brings us to Q. And how do we enter Q, and why Q is very awesome in my opinion. I started working with Q core team 1 year ago, and we did awesome traveling around the world. One thing I want to say about Q is it has a lot of experience from Web 1 and Web 2 because the co-initiators have 25 plus years in laws and financial worlds. They bring their knowledge into our world of Q. So this is a very coded bug. So how do we do it? So what we do is we are the infrastructure for decentralized projects, for example, DAOs. What we offer, we handheld projects. I've been talking to a lot of projects, they want to do a lot of stuff, but they don't know how to do it. So we offer custom templates for the constitutions to make them the right way. So constitution is a human readable text that you want to know that every part of DAO, every member understands, and It's not internal document, it's a document that can talk to outside world because it's created in that manner. So let's talk about constitutions. This is a version of Q constitution. I don't want to go with all the details, but just to give you a brief detail how this can be done for any DAO that needs one. What we do have on q.org website is the DAO factory tooling. We have 10 steps in which we help any DAO to generate the constitution on their own. By doing that, they have to answer a few different questions, and usually it's guided on the video call or in person because these questions tend to be a little bit complicated, but it's necessary for you to have a real document that's can be represented in the law and jurisdictions. So there's a few options. You can choose your tokens, how to create them. You can click Mostra Communicate. What the hell is this? Okay. You can enable representatives. So let's try to run down this. The idea is not to showcase you today the DAO factories, just to provide you few sneak peek shots on how does it look like. The end goal is to create your own constitution. Yeah. And end up something like this. It's the constitution that you can actually download, and it's also hashable, and it's on chain. So you can have the parameters set. People usually ask me like, well, we don't like constitutions because the rules are set. Well, in your constitution, you can set the set of rules on how do you change the constitution. So there are many, many ways to do it. In your constitution, you have, I think you mentioned the why some votes are, higher positioned than some other votes. For example, we call that expert balance. So if we have experts in the fields of who knows what, we could use them to do certain things, and that you can specify that in your constitution. So they could be voting for certain specific things. They can even veto certain specific things because they have knowledge or expertise in those fields. So there's a lot of things that you can customize your constitution with, and it's applicable to all your DAO members. Can you translate what does it even mean, this word?
Show any.
Okay. So the second thing is once you have constitution, let's try to enforce that constitution, because without rules, without enforcing the rules mean pretty much nothing. So that leads us to our solution, which is root nodes. So the best way to imagine what a root node is, okay, maybe we can do it that way. The best way to imagine what root nodes are is you can imagine your regular validator nodes. And on top of that, what we build is the, you're trying to download it again?
I'm trying to put it offline, so it's not.
Okay, let's talk about root nodes. It's fine. It's not this one.
Okay, now
You can leave it here, it's fine.
Okay, now it's offline, so
Thank you.
sorry.
So the best way to imagine a root node is on top of the validator node, you have an independent body. So we call it a vertical layer of security that we embedded in Q. So root nodes, what are they doing? They are validating the validators. So they're making check and balances that everything is okay, like what we call them a human layer. They can also veto out proposals that are malicious, that are going against constitutions. So the question is, how do you choose who can be a root node? Well, obviously, to be more decentralized, to be truly decentralized, they're voted in by the community, and they can be voted out by the community. And the beauty of the root nodes is they are around the world set in a very decentralized manner. So you're not going to have all in Germany or all in Austria. You're going to have them all across the world. One of the biggest root nodes that we have currently is Deutsche Telekom. We even had the state of Liechtenstein running a root node on Q, which is very interesting. Before they gave us the regulatory clearance, they had to check on how to run a root node on Q. So by the way, Q has regulatory clearance that it's not security in Germany and in Liechtenstein. That's a cool asset to have these days. And these root nodes, they actually apply themselves, and if they're elected by a community, they can become and act as one. So this is the full list. We're not going to go through that. If you would like to know more about them, you can check out the q.org. They validate the validators. So they monitor that everybody is doing things that by the constitution. For example, if you're doing something wrong, they give you one warning, 2 warnings, and then they have the execution mechanism to slash your funds if you did something wrong. And then you can dispute that if it's good or not. Or if you try to propose a malicious proposal, for example, in the MangoDAO hack, what the guy did, he stole the funds and then he voted himself that nobody's going to sue him. Root nodes, in this case, would veto out the proposal that's actually malicious in that time. So that's one of the things that they do. They can also do the code upgrades without the multi-sigs, all kinds of stuff, but we don't have time to go through all the details. That's why I'm here for the next couple of days, and you can pick my brain however you want.
I'm not clear, is a root node an individual or an automation, or is it software or a person?
It's a human layer. So it's people, individuals, companies, they can all apply, and you can vote, if you're a DAO member, you can vote for them to in and vote them out. So it's a human layer that I explained where we go beyond code is law, like a pilot who is monitoring the autopilot. And the third thing is, how do we resolve our disputes? For example, if root node slashes you and you say, well, it's not my fault, it was this, that, the other, or whatever happens on Q chain, or what happened with the UkiDAO case where it's landed on a judge in California who didn't know what he's looking at, we integrated the ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, the biggest private arbitration court in the world. So this is where the disputes actually happen in Q, and that's how do we do that? We integrate it in constitution. So all the parties in the DAO agree by a constitution, by law, that they will have disputes in the ICC. For example, I'm from Croatia and you guys may be from Austria. And the one thing that we're not gonna agree on is where to have our disputes. You're gonna say, let's talk in Austria. I'm gonna say, no, let's go to court in Croatia. And by having this embedded in the constitution, we agree that the ICC is the court where we're gonna settle our disputes. So this resolves that pressure of not knowing where to go, or maybe not having the expertise, not knowing how to dispute our disputes. So this is the third thing that it's very important to have. And going to the end of the presentation, for the last year, we did a lot of new partnerships. Some of those are not even mentioned here. For example, The Village House, maybe you've heard of it in Paris. We did some awesome integrations there. They're one of the DAOs that actually participated and built on Q. And we invite you, if you have your own DAO, if you're thinking about DAO, if you're participating in a DAO, Q is a go-to place to have a secure and transparent governance with trinity of governance embedded in the system itself. That's what you get from the get-go. And then on top of that, you build your own stuff with a good know-how. So this is your personal invitation. I invite you to a place where no nation states are involved, a place where you can create your own laws, a place where you can execute those and use the best-in-class dispute resolution mechanism to dispute them, if any. Thank you.
I'm really curious to hear how you guys came up with the sort of, it seems like a template or like a no-code interface for coming up with the constitution for various DAOs on Q. Sort of like, how did you come up with that framework or template and decide like these are the things that need to be specified, what can happen beyond that, like how does that work?
So I think the answer maybe to that question would be the experience of the co-initiators 25 plus years and working in the biggest corporations. One of our co-initiator has 2 degrees of law, one in Europe, one in USA. And it also comes up with the partners that we have. One of those are root nodes. They are legal experts, individuals or companies around the world. So when you combine all that knowledge into one place, you can generate something that we call Q Constitution, and you can help others to build the same way. Does that answer your question, or no?
I think it does to an extent,
Okay.
but maybe I'm more curious to hear about like what aspects did you intentionally bring into that sort of template. So there was something about like thresholds that you need to reach in terms of voting, right? Like a governance token, obviously. Is there anything around like defining membership, or like what are the big blocks within that?
In Q Constitution, it's very large playground. So we put elements into it, like you can have your own representatives, you can have your own experts. So what we did before doing that, we have seen all the other DAOs, how they did business, what failed, what worked, why it worked and why it failed, and what mechanisms were used while doing so. And what work, we said, okay, let's try to include it, and let's try to educate people how this mechanisms works, why you should have expert panels for your DAO and why you should not have experts for your DAO. Like a very custom approach to each project that's building on a queue.
Okay, cool. And I have one more question. I don't want to monopolize, but something I'm really curious about in terms of dispute resolution. Do you have any cases of DAOs that have brought disputes forward to the ICC? And how did that play out?
Luckily no, because dispute resolution doesn't happen every day. We can have a DAO off-chain, on-chain here, and we can run it for 1 year, 2 years, and no disputes. But when they do happen, it's ugly. And this is more like a security layer. When it happens, not if, but when it happens, you have it embedded here.
Hi. How can the Constitution be changed after it's in place? Is there any mechanism for that? And who creates the Constitution? Is it one person, or that's up to the DAO to decide? Or
yeah, so Constitution can be changed. It's the question here is mostly, so the answer here is mostly like it's very custom. So your DAO wants to have a changeable Constitution option, and your DAO doesn't want to have that. So Q is not telling you what you should do. You're telling us what you want to do. So if you want to have constitutions that can be changed, we can talk about that and we can give you the models on how to do it, or anything in between. So we're not giving you the rules, we're giving you options, we're giving you tools to achieve any form of a DAO that you need and any constitution that you need for that.
But you said the Constitution has the ability, or the dispute has the ability to slash tokens, for example, as a form of punishment?
No. The root nodes do, the human layer, the pilot that's monitoring the code. They are slashing if they need to be slashed.
But that is not up to the, is that something inbuilt in Q, or is it something the Constitution can decide if either that possibility is present or not?
So what I did is I explained how Q Constitution works and what is a part of Q Constitution. That are the root nodes and the dispute resolution mechanism. In your DAO, you don't have to have that. That's what Q has from the get-go. And also, it gives you the tools for you to have that as well. So what you can have is write down the rules in your constitution, and you can say, these are the rules. These are the slashing mechanisms for when, why, and how. And this is a dispute resolution if somebody is not happy about it. And you can use the Q network if you want to be secured by that. Yes.
Okay. My question is fast. Is there any link or registry between the Q chain and legal jurisdictions? Like when I submit my DAO into Q, is there anything happening in the background of Q in which you also gain like
legal wrapper LLC?
Yeah.
So we are working with LexDAO, and we're going to also work with some other DAO that offer that tooling. So you can achieve that through our partners like that. But Q Constitution is a human readable document that has implications on jurisdiction. For example, in the case of UkiDAO case, where the case landed in California to a judge, if it was made on Q, what the judge sees is that ICC is the dispute resolution mechanism. So judge will said, well, this is not to me to judge. I'll pass this to ICC because you guys agree on this. And that's the key difference here. If you don't have this, well, I can sue you in Croatia, and the Croatian court will, determine your fate, which is not very good for you potentially.
Hey, yeah, one quick question. I was just wondering, I assume this kind of more advanced way of doing things would make more sense for more advanced, larger scale sized organizations. Like it wouldn't necessarily make sense for a very small kind of DAO or startup to implement such a kind of
I would argue on that, because we do have some smaller DAOs. It's not about big DAOs, it's about opportunity for all. So if you want to scale your DAO, this will not block you. If you have a smaller DAO, you don't have to use all the features. Yeah. So I just presented the full feature list, but you can use whatever you need.
Got you. So you could make it much simpler, leaner, and just...
Yeah, it could be complex or it can be simple. As I said, custom is the word that we have here.
Yeah, cool. Final little thing is, does it implement any principles of like sociocracy or holocracy, if that makes any sense to you?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Are you familiar with like sociocracy or holocracy as like governance and decision-making frameworks?
Can you give me an example of what you mean?
It's like sociocracy is like trying to implement principles of more like consent-based governance. It's like a way of making more participatory democratic decisions. It's like a framework for that. But I guess you could code that into the constitution.
So we're not deciding for you guys what kind of democracy or what you're going to use in your DAO. It's up to you. But we can help you get that in a proper way. So whatever you decide, it can be in good foundations. That's what Q is. It's a toolkit. It's a framework. It's
super cool.
We can continue on. Let's go catch up coffee. Thank you guys. Let's continue there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Cool. So what I want to do two things today. I'm going to break it into two parts. One, because we sort of have jumped deep into presentations about voting and automation of voting and tokenized voting and governance tools and all that kind of stuff. I actually sort of want to step back in part one and question some of our assumptions about governance. And in part two, I want to actually demonstrate a sort of soft DAO tool for tools that you might use for bootstrapping a DAO and evolving your governance, a tool on Holochain. So I'm curious, well, actually, I just want to just acknowledge, for those of you who have come to some of my sessions, you know that I've been messing with assumptions that we have about blockchain and what it can do, what it can't do, that's some of those things. Tokens on blockchain is, I was just looking around the room to see if Monty was here, because I think he was most concerned about some of the assumptions that he'd bought into, that he's like, uh-oh, maybe this is a problem. And then also assumptions about currencies and money, and like how we might have to expand some of our understanding there and not jump straight to, tokenized money only. I kind of want to do a similar thing and mess with some of our assumptions right now about governance. But I want to start by asking, is there anyone here, actually want you to raise your hand, may or may not have to say anything, but raise your hand if you have had the experience of truly great group governance. Who's had an experience of that kind of thing? It was outstanding. You know that the collective was making better decisions than any of the individuals would have been able to make, right? Because you were tapping into something more than just individual. Who's had that experience? Okay, good. A bunch of people have had. Anna, did you change your mind? You didn't have that experience, or you changed your mind? Okay, all right. Okay, gotcha. So what made it great? Can people just shout out? I don't think we are going to be able to get the mic to everyone necessarily. Can people shout out what made that experience so great and what made the governance good? People listening. People adopting? Adapting, yeah, great. A certain kind of intimacy, connection, relatedness.
It's less stressful because you know that if you have a moment of weakness or you're not there, things proceed and it's not responsible for yourself.
So it was less stressful because you know that things wouldn't just charge forward without you or without good consideration. Is that what you're saying?
People able to notice and manage their own and other people's needs.
Their own and others' needs, is that what we said? Yeah, so people able to manage, acknowledge their own needs and others' needs. Other things that made it great? Felix?
Groups managing complexity that one individual could never handle.
Right, the group being able to hold more than an individual probably could and manage more complexity. Other things that made it great? Maybe that's enough, but if you think of something, we should bring that back up. What I want to know is actually, for those of you who had this great experience, how much of it was about voting? Raise your hand if voting is what actually made it great. Any kind of voting. I don't care whether it's sortition, ranked voting, quadratic voting. I mean, any kind of voting. Is that what made it great? Probably not. I mean, there are some actually great, there are some better algorithms that we could do for voting potentially, but, and again, I'm gonna make reference to some of the things in prior sessions. You know how like with the upward spiral video, he learned that the patterns of erosion that were like, when water would concentrate and start actually digging into the hillsides and making gullies, and the gullies were eroding the hillsides. So he tried to block the gullies to prevent that erosion, but then when a big rain would come, it would just wash away whatever he blocked the gullies with. And he learned he had to actually go up higher to be able to affect things. And he would just take a little hand trowel and make small shifts above the gullies and keep the water from ever concentrating that much, right? So he learned that he had to go further upstream in order to make effective change. And part of what I'm suggesting is that voting is already too downstream to be very effective. That if you think about it, deciding what you're going to vote on, how the issue is framed for the vote, what things are worthy of consideration, how you oppose things with each other, whether pairwise or not, right? Like, who gets to propose the votes, all of that kind of stuff, all of the good decisions had to happen before, like in the construction of what's being voted on, right? By the time you're voting, it's too late to end up with good decisions if good decisions didn't go into that, right? It's just pick your choice of less bad, right? I think the other, well, maybe it was you. Okay, I don't know. Mystery sounds from the mics. So there's an article, and there's one before this about the future of governance is not governments. There's a blog post I wrote a few years ago that kind of deconstructs governance. What is it for? Why do we need it? You know, maybe it's not about governments. And then the next one actually kind of deconstructs some of our assumptions about governance. This is just, we don't have time to go into all that right now, but I kind of recommend it if you are interested in going deeper on this. And I made some notes so I wouldn't forget. So maybe we don't have to say much more about this. Oh yeah, there is something more to say about this. So one of the challenges that I think is confronting us in the Web3 space, in the decentralization space, is that if these things that I just said are true, that basically by the time you get to voting, you've had to already make all the good decisions beforehand. What are the chances that we can actually build smart contracts that are for sure embody good decisions, or that we can build smart contracts or constitutions for communities before the community has had a chance to actually engage in that process, or that we can build those things to account for all corner cases or circumstances? Is there pretty much any chance of that happening? It's not really a rhetorical question. I want to know if anybody believes that that's possible. Nobody's going to take a stand for that one? Okay. Well, yeah, exactly. For very limited, narrow use cases, like, you know, we put tokens into this thing, we put numbers into this thing, we know what those numbers add up to, and then we did a vote using those same numbers about where they should go, and then we send them there. Okay, for that very limited use case, smart contracts are probably effective, right? I'm not saying they're useless. They're just, we probably shouldn't think of them as governance, right? We should think of them as a very small, like, tool in the tool belt of governance. So what I'm suggesting, and the reason that I want to demo this tool, is that I'm afraid that we're hard-coding things about governance, hard-coding assumptions, like voting leads to good decisions and things like that, way before a community is ready. And it actually prevents getting to some of those experiences. When you guys most people thought of some experience where you experienced good governance, like good collective intelligence, good sense making by a group, right? And that was probably something that was a function of co-creation, right? Where people were involved in creating the processes used, and you didn't just take something out of a box and get stuck with whatever was in the box for your process. And so what I'm suggesting is what we need to do is facilitate that evolution of the process, help groups actually evolve into their agreements, protocols, standards. And then some of those might turn out to be appropriate for smart contracts. Some of those might turn out to be appropriately coded into automation tools, but some of them may not. And that the trick here is being able to make the evolutionary process transparent and accountable and on-chain in ways that, blockchain is a little expensive to put on-chain. Like, so we do this stuff off-chain, and then we put the simplified things on-chain. So now I want to switch to actually playing with how. How is a part of our horrible, weird, and simplified naming protocols for apps in Holochain, where we have like apps called We for group activities, and How for decision-making about how we're going to do things together, and Where for, what are some of the other bad examples? Anyway, When is the scheduling app, right? So anyway, this is not necessarily, coming from a good marketing department. So just want to, oh yeah, one other thing I want to say is about a sort of design principle in kind of holochain versus blockchain. And in blockchain land, it's kind of like we assert that you can't move forward without like the concrete barriers between cars driving on the road. And in holochain land, we're saying, actually, for many things, just painted lines are fine. And in fact, if you make concrete barriers, that's heavy and expensive to do if you require concrete barriers, and it creates unacceptable constraints sometimes. So you're on your way into town, and a tree has fallen across your side of the road, and you can't cross over to the other side of the road to get around it, right? There are cases where you want to be able to do that kind of thing, and you can't do it if you've overly constrained. But if you have, let's say, if all cars had road cameras and self-reported if you crossed the line, and then you could have a kind of accountability, and you could still actually hold people to account and potentially revoke their driver's license or something if they're driving irresponsibly. But you don't have to make it impossible to drive irresponsibly before you can drive, right? Does that make sense? And the stakes are even higher here, right? We have tons of metal hurtling toward each other that can kill ourselves, and yet we don't make sure that we're always constrained with concrete barriers from getting out of our lane, right? So in that spirit, what Holochain is doing, now let me just give a disclaimer. This version of How, Moritz already clicked a little button in the upper left corner called Initialize, and he's got an older version of How from like last, I don't know when it was last updated for the version he has. The newer version of How actually lets you import or export your starting template. And this is just a sample starting template for the Holochain community for our own governance. And it's the starting seed. It's not like fully blown up into the community. And so it's broken into a couple of parts. One is the HAPs. So it's protocols and standards and agreements between HAP builders that want to deal with interoperation or even potentially make requests of each other and that kind of thing. And then we have the Holochain system. So this is the Holochain software development and any standards and stuff inside of that. And we're basically building a tree. There's different views of the tree. If you could click on the other view briefly. So as the tree grows, it might be more helpful to view it a little bit like a File Explorer, Directory Explorer that we're used to dealing with. But I think for today, this is a useful format. And then there's the social protocols that are being used. How are we doing sense-making communication and stuff with each other? And in particular, we're starting with 3, define, refine, and align. We're basically saying, so another way of thinking about this is, you know how in the Ethereum ecosystem you have EIPs, Ethereum Improvement Protocols, or ERCs, requests for comments for new standards and that kind of thing. So ERC20 is a standard that emerges from a feedback process of making requests for feedback about a standard as it's emerging. This is kind of a way of thinking about that, making the EIP or ERC process accountable and visible online, right? Because, for example, for the Ethereum community, that all happens in a centralized site. We don't even know what happens if somebody proposes a silly idea that for some reason Vitalik or the foundation doesn't like, and they just disappear it. There's no visibility into that, no accountability for that. You can't tell what's happening in that process. Does that make sense? It's all centralized and opaque. It's still Web 2, right? What we're suggesting is this is a process for creating these kinds of standards, and you could create other social protocols, but for this particular one, for the holochain community, we're saying you define new things, you go through a refinement process, and then a community alignment around those things. Does that make sense? I know that they're sequenced in alphabetical order, not in sequential order, so a little weird. But so let's take a look at define. We have 2 options on here at the moment, petition and declaration. And so you could just have a person declare, I'm proposing a new standard, right? Or you could gather support first and show that there's a support for a need for something in a petition process and bring that forward. Then there's a refine process. At the moment, we only have one process in here called the comment period, which is like, collaborative editing on a Google document, sort of. You can throw on comments and suggested edits and that kind of stuff. And then the alignment process at the moment has vote, consensus, and sortition as examples of what you could do for alignment, for gauging alignment on something. And so mostly what we've been doing is, in other domains, is focusing on the alignment process and skipping the steps of how did we do the sense making, and we're saying sense making comes first. So for an example, there's an ERC 721 interop. So ERC 721 is the NFT standard on Ethereum world, and so people have started creating a proposal for an integration standard, because there's actually we now have a project that's doing this, doing NFT storage on holochain for EVM type space NFTs. And anyway, this is some of the early story about it as an example. But what I'd like to do is start a new proposal, like mutual credit, witnessed mutual credit standard. Can you, so click on HAPS. And then, so I'm not, by the way, claiming that this is awesome UI. This was Eric Harris Brown, and he's made actually a lot of cool improvements to the UI, but it's still a little complex. So he clicked add child, and now we're gonna say, I don't know, mute cred or something like that for mutual credit. This is how to make paths somewhat human friendly. Let's use indexed versioning, and we're gonna do, version. Well, indexed is just counting, like 1, 2. If you wanna do semantic versioning, you could do the points. Title is witnessed mutual credit standard. And then you actually define which of the social processes this is gonna use. So you can say, we're gonna start with a declaration, and then we're gonna do comment period as the only option, and then we'll do, I don't know, voting, sure. We'll do voting for the alignment process. And then you can also set up are there other stewards? The person creating this already is a steward, but you can set up other stewards. Yeah, I think you're in your own land at the moment. You only have you as an option. So try putting yourself in. Is it redundant? Yeah, it doesn't take you. You're already in. Okay, cool. So now we have a new mutual credit standard that is in progress over here. And now you'll note, actually scroll up for a second. You see this kind of completion of the clock here, right? You can see we haven't really started. We're not very far. The hands are not very far around the clock. This clock, by the way, is a variant of the Holochain logo. So for the Holochain community, that's why we're using it. You could do something else. But now if you edit a section and just throw in some summary about, yeah, it almost doesn't matter what it says. Cool. Well, wait, save that one now. Then scroll back up. You should see, oh, the clock's moving a little further along. So the clock becomes a visible public indicator about what stage a process is in and how far it is along. And can you actually see the do you know what you have to click on to see the state machine for the advancement? Oh, click on the question mark. Yeah, there we go. So this you can see is kind of the state machine that the thing can move through. It goes through define, refine, align, and either goes to alive or defunct, and anywhere along the process, it could also move to defunct, right? It could move to dead. So if he keeps editing more things, then if you edit each of the sections really quickly, just throw something in, test or whatever in each of the sections so that we can move on to the next thing. And you can see there's some help text in here telling you what these sections are for. And the sections, by the way, are defined by the parent protocols that actually inject other things. So for example, specification, rationale, reference implementation, Zoom signatures, this would be like the API interfaces. Those are required only in the HAPS column because up above that, one of the sections said, this is what defines one of the things that we're making agreements around HAPS because we need to know how to interoperate, and we need a sample to show that it works, like that kind of thing. So these fields even only exist because of the parent HAPS thing defining them. And so you can actually build like these trees of sense making like that where you can reformat what's involved in has to be included in a decision in that part of the tree. So what else is missing for being able to move forward? Whenever the student, all right, so we're moving forward. Great, so he just moved the definition forward into the refine phase, and now we have a document that is editable to people. Well, actually, he just turned on commenting. So we now have the commenting thing enabled. And you could add comments on a section. You can also, can you just highlight the word mutual? And yeah, click. Oh, all right, this version doesn't have it. The other current version actually lets you do like track change type things, highlight a section, replace suggested text and stuff. Anyway, we all know how to use editing of documents, right? So we don't necessarily need to do that here, but then you can see you can accept changes or you can remove changes, you can do different things like that. But the point is that all of that is being recorded on chain. All of that is that people can be held to account for. So if somebody makes a proposal and says, we're going to undergo a voting process, and then just moves it along and skips the voting process. Yeah, exactly. So you can, there's not an amazing UI yet for being able to view the versions, but you can go back and view versions and see who took which actions. And so we need a lot more UI work done on this. But yeah, so go ahead and move it to align. We're going to say we did the comment period well enough now, and you can see we've moved around the process, and now we're entering to a voting period, and then so we have to turn on voting. Cool. And then people can actually approve or reject. It's just it's the only thing that a vote is doing. And you can see we now have voting enabled, and we have 1 vote for and no votes against, and he's the only user in this system at the moment, so voting is complete. And so you could move it to a live. Yeah. What? It passed, exactly. Exactly. That's like what was the example the Q guy was giving about the guy, who owns the majority of the tokens, and he puts it to a vote. Can you sue? Should we sue him? Yeah, exactly. So now it's alive. This thing has made it through the whole process. You can see it as a live agreement, but we could come along and we could actually, where is it? You can add another version. Oh, I don't know what happened here with the interface. It may be under HAPS we have to add another version with the same path. Or if you click on mutual credit again, do we have? Well, what you're supposed to be able to do is put a new proposal in for another version that can replace that. So if somebody does abuse the process, says they're going to put something to a vote, you can actually say, well, screw him, I'm just going to do the same thing, but I'm actually going to honor the group process, and our version will replace the prior version. So this is not, I'm not suggesting that this is driving with guardrails. This is driving without guardrails, but with accountability in the evolutionary process. And so that was the quick demo. Hopefully we'll continue to improve the UI on here, and I'm curious what kind of feedback, thoughts, questions there are for evolutionary process being on-chain and enabled with a history.
I was going to say, to me, this looks like the body of an organization much more than a smart contract. Yeah, it looks to me more like the body of an organization where you always have in view what rules there are for what meaningful participation in the organization looks like. And therefore, I can align myself with how the overall organization is operating rather than jumping into a Discord channel and seeing a stream of conversations or comments and not really knowing where to start.
Where's the other mic? Sorry, what? Yeah. Okay. Is it on? Can you turn the mic on?
All right. So quick practical question regarding the versions. And so what's the logic of replacement? Does a new version always replace the older version, or is there some other logics of whether a new version can replace the old version or not?
At the moment, there are no constraints. New versions automatically replace old versions, and yet there's always a version history, so you haven't lost that. Oh, I would actually add one more thing to what Moritz said. If this looks like the body of an organization, I would also like to say, yes, these things also you can put code snippets in or things like that to make code visible, but you don't have to be a coder to understand what protocols are being used in the organization. And you can read summary real human text to see, what's going on and why. So I think it helps make it accessible to less technical people too. Social coders.
Nice. Yeah, so I noticed it's a tree structure, and I just wonder about reorganization when it kind of comes to that critical point. So define, align might change to maybe 4 categories rather than 3.
Yeah, in the back end, first of all, technically a document can be multi-homed. It can actually have 2 parents, and in the back end you can edit the parents. I don't know what we're doing in the UI for that right now. This is part of why I'm saying there's more work to do on the UI, because I don't see some of the tools for that. Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
My question was very similar to yours. I mean, it was can you propose a change to say HC system, and then how would that affect the conductor and then the API underneath the?
Yeah, you can propose a new version to HC system, and like if we look at HC system, there's no real information on here. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not being very visible, but HC system also defined some of the fields that show up down below. What would happen if you changed something? All the things that had existed prior would still have whatever formats and structures and status that they have, but any new things you create would now be affected by the new rules in HC system in terms of what fields they contain or processes are available to them, those things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate the less technical view of it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Can you put the slides?
Battery.
Okay. Great start. Unknown error.
Yeah, we are done any minute now. Last technical issues. What's up? Commons Hub. All right, while we're waiting for Julio's super slow computer. Yes. Welcome to our presentation on the future of the Commons Hub. We will talk about the Commons Hub validator nodes on Cosmos Hub and Region Network. Then we'll go into expansion plans for next year or years. And then talk more broadly about the envisioned future of the Commons Hub. But first we're waiting for Julio's super slow laptop. Yeah, I'm speaking. Okay. Present. Thanks, guys. Okay, and we start with the validator nodes, which has been an intense technical challenge since I announced the the launch of our validator nodes about, when was it, 2 months ago, and Emil was very happy with me doing that.
Yeah, Felix announced we're going to launch the validator at this event at Ko-Fi without me. Like, we didn't speak about it, that we're going to go live now. And yeah, so in August, I started really doing all the tech, and since 5 days we're on mainnet, and it's all good. Yeah, so we're live on the Cosmos Hub, Neutron, and Stride, and the Region Network. So, short reminder, I guess most know the Cosmos Hub. Their mission is to bring inter-blockchain communication to the blockchain world. And Neutron and Stride, they are consumer chains of Cosmos Hub. So they borrow their security from the Cosmos Hub. So they're consumer chains, and every validator has to validate them as well. Yeah, and then there's Region as well. All of them are delegated proof of stake blockchains, and are based on the Tendermint consensus. Yeah, a short reminder on what is delegated proof of stake and the role of validating in those networks. So a delegated proof of stake is a verification and consensus mechanism in the blockchain. It works by the network relying on a selected group of validators. They are elected by the token holders according to the number of staked coins. So there's an active set, and only if you're in there, you're actually validating blocks. Yeah, and as it is easier to find consensus among, let's say, 180 active validators, it comes with increased scalability and speed, but there are also some risk of inequity and security challenges with that. Yeah, and as the roles of a validator, obviously there is block proposal and validation, but also we as validators have to ensure performance of the systems and high security standards. So if we mess up, we don't sign blocks and so on, we miss up on rewards and all our delegators. And if it goes on for too long, we're going to get jailed, and slashing starts. So people who staked on us are actually going to lose a small percentage of the staked coins. And then the worst thing that could happen, we could get tombstoned if we do some dubious stuff like double signing, and then we're dead and can never come back from this validator key or address. Yeah, then the third thing is the on-chain governance. So as a validator, you can make proposals and also vote on those proposals and decide the blockchain politics that way. Yeah, and then most validators also offer additional services like they run the block explorer, or they provide some open source tools and so on. And our additional service is this here, what we're doing, hosting these events, and we want to take the money, take the commission to improve this place and provide it to the community. Yeah, I'm gonna have 2 slides on the technical setup. So we are using a Horcrux signing cluster. So on the left, you see it's a threshold signer that is based on Shamir's secret sharing. The golden key, let's say, is the plain text validator key. It gets sharded, split up and encrypted, and 3 key shards are created. And with 2 out of those 3 key shards, the original plain text private validator key can be recreated. And this also uses the raft consensus mechanism, which is a rather simple consensus mechanism that uses this leader and follower principle, and is more comprehensible than other and faster than other consensus machines. Yeah, the pros of our setup: we can ensure redundancy. So we have what's called an active-active architecture of the validator node. So there are validator nodes that ask the cosigner cluster, hey, I got a block, I want to sign it, please provide me the signature. The cosigners are doing their thing, they're electing a leader, they are asking for the key shards, they're recreating, the leader is recreating the key, signs the block, and also updates the the blockchain state, like so to prevent double signing. Like we're just gonna sign the block at this height, and we're never gonna sign a block again at this height. Yeah. Okay, so that's the redundancy, and then we also have increased key security by these sharded and encrypted keys, and we also use or can use the sentry node architecture, which prevents from DDoSing. The cons of our setup: we don't yet use hardware security modules, but it can be upgraded. Like if this is a success, and we got a lot of stake on us, that would be the next step. Yeah, so that's the architecture again. That it's basically 6 servers. 3 of them are the cosigners. They have the key shards and the block state, the block height, and they are connected with a WireGuard VPN tunnel, talking to each other. And then in the middle, you have 3 sentry nodes running the chain binaries, so the software for the blockchain. And those sentry nodes ask the cosigner cluster, "Hey, I want to sign this block. Give me the signature," and then they gossip it to the internet. And about the redundancy, so one of the cosigners can fail, and one of the Cosmos sentry nodes can fail, and we're still successfully signing blocks, for that matter. Yeah. Then the last thing we also do is monitoring. There is one additional server that asks the other servers, "Hey, are you alive? How's your, I don't know, like CPU, storage, and so on?" And also aggregates all the logs. So for debugging, if something goes wrong, we can see what the whole system is doing. And yeah, it's aggregated on this monitor. There's like a Grafana visualization. You can see on the top right, like some graphs, how the servers are doing. And based on this, we have some alerting that then, if an instance is down, if there's any problem, the Commons Hub team is gonna, get an email or a call or whatever, and then hopefully wake me up in the middle of the night so I can fix it. Yeah. That's it for the tech, and Felix is gonna elaborate on the governance now.
Right. Can you hear me? Yeah. So generally in governance, we talk about 4 different kinds of decisions, which are first systems upgrade, then less comprehensive, maybe a parameter change of existing parameters. Then we can have expenditure requests and other decisions that don't involve upgrade, parameter change, or expenditure, such as, for example, a partnership with someone else that doesn't involve money, or me speaking somewhere without requesting any funds for that. So these are the 4 kinds of decisions taken on-chain, and the 4 kinds of reactions: yes, no, no with veto, and abstain. And our idea of governance is that, on one hand, we want to be active participants in governance, but also our understanding of on-chain politics is wider than just representing our stakeholders or actors delegating their voting power to us, but rather also informing their perspective, their political perspective, and informing and contributing to the political debate. And while currently still most of these decisions taken on-chain are very technical and not overly political, we believe that this will change with the growing maturity of these systems, and that more and more we will be able to identify political profiles from different alliances and different on-chain politicians or political parties, if you will. And our idea to utilize the community grounding we have here is to take governance decisions based on the input and feedback from our community. That means we will also host recurring calls or meetings on the specific chains we validate, with people in our community that are interested in getting involved, learning more about these systems, and having some impact on the political opinion forming in these systems. Yeah, so the political aims in doing so is that we want to promote active governance and gain active influence on the politics of these chains. And more specifically, we want to strengthen commons-centric perspectives in these chains. The financial aims in doing this, well, overall, the proceeds from our validation service at first must, of course, fund the service and also the work that goes into maintaining these validators, but also into renovating the hub and subsidizing events and all things we do here. And for that to become active chains, as active validators, as Emil explained, there is an active set, and it's for Cosmos it's 180, for region it's 75 validators with the highest stake on them. For Cosmos, that currently means 72,000 Atom tokens with about $600,000 market value. And for region, it's 68,000 region tokens with $3,000 market value. The region tokens will be...
We're almost there on region.
We're almost there on region, yeah. So we're quite optimistic to get there very soon on region. On Cosmos, it's going to be a bit harder struggle to get there. Yes, yeah. $600,000 of Atom, which yeah, is 72,000 atoms, to be among the top 180 validators for the Cosmos Hub.
How do you get people to choose you? Do you expect to be out there and go, guys, take on us, we're great?
Pretty much.
We're gonna this afternoon. I'm gonna do a session on shilling the Commons Hub validator and inviting you to spread the word and get it going.
Awesome. And right, for our validator service, we charge 10% commission of the staking rewards. Staking rewards in Cosmos, so for Cosmos Hub, it's almost 19%. For region network, it's about 22% per year. Staking rewards for the stakers. Out of these, roughly 20%, we take 10% commission. So yearly, we gain about 2% of the value staked on us. Yes, Coinbase is asking 20%.
Coinbase is asking 20% on like the top layer, and I mean you can find probably someone with 0%. Like it's from, let's say, normally it's like from 5 to 20%.
Yeah. And of course there are also validate programs from each of these chains where basically the large stash of tokens held by the foundations is then staked on validators that behave in certain ways and apply to these programs, which we also want to do. So, where do these funds go to? What are the expansion plans for the hub? I think many of you have already heard that. We want to build out the third floor of this building and add 20 more beds and also a third level of bathrooms over there. Then we want to cover that whole roof in solar panels in order to cover our electric energy needs as far as possible with renewable energy. We want to insulate our windows for better energy retention in the winter, renovate bathrooms and kitchens, and get to a fully functional fab lab. That means a wood and metal workshop and also IoT workshop and a functioning 3D printer.
Yeah. Some of you
sewing machine, okay.
Some of you who stay in the barn already know the place. That's actually going to be the workshop, and yeah, I think it's going to be a great place there. There's a lot of space and some infrastructure already, like the sorting systems and all of that, and the tables. It's going to be great.
Right. So that's just the most crucial. We're very open to further suggestions of what the hub really needs. sauna maybe. Huh?
There's a cat coming, right?
Yeah, we'll have a cat very soon.
The cat announcement.
Right, right. Good Wi-Fi infrastructure. Oh, what do you mean? Our Wi-Fi infrastructure is not great?
It's
You remember how bad
provider.
it was in the first year? Working on it. Yeah, all of these investments, all of these expansion plans mean that we need approximately €200,000 raise. And the funding sources to get there are pre-sale of services such as event space and accommodation, sponsorships and strategic partnerships. And yeah, please. I'm happy to announce 3 years of tokens. We'll have the Commons Hub event venue, or CHE token. We estimate that we can confidently run 60 days of events per year, which on 3 years is 180 CHE tokens, which we seek to sell for approximately €700 per token to projects and individuals that want to secure their involvement by enabling this expansion, want to influence themes processed here, the community and project involvement, and that are confident in also, like that's more for the individuals, in also reselling these tokens to the CCA, which is doing, I think, 80. We calculated if we have four events per year as this one, as the CCA, we already need 84 out of these 180 tokens. So quite a lot of these tokens will be bought back by the CCA in the coming years. And then we have the Commons Hub Accommodation Day token, the CHAD token. Thank you, Giulio, for the memes. And yeah, they're going to sell for €25 a token, same as accommodation nowadays, and we will sell 500 per year in order to still have enough revenue over each year to maintain the hub. And we'll sell these to regular guests and Commons Hub supporters that want to invest in real value, lock in the price for the next 3 years, secure accommodation, like for example, guys like Scott, I know you'll be here next year for like probably 20 something days. Just buy a stock of tokens and tell us to automatically lock you in for every event you attend. You don't have to worry about booking or no, we take care of that. And yeah, last but not least, just support the hub in its expansion plans. So second perspective for doing that race is strategic partnerships. Roughly said, we're looking for community alignment in terms of shared values, shared quests, shared interests and subculture, and in technical match. So as mentioned before, we're particularly looking towards DPoS networks who are searching for community validators. We're looking for projects developing governance infrastructure that we could prototype here. And we're looking for projects pursuing wider economic experiments that would find a fruitful environment here. And what we offer for strategic partners is an experimental playground for systems design. And these are not just technical systems, but also social, economic, and maybe also natural systems to some degree. We offer a showroom and testing ground for prototypes, also a fab lab for physical prototypes, really. And yeah, I think more generally a fertile ground for intellectual elaboration of concepts, of narratives. And more economically speaking, of course, brand visibility for these 60 plus days of events every year. Yeah, the broader vision of the Commons Hub is, I think you'll see it materialize to some degree already, is to build, first off for me, a place to live and thrive together. Then a horizontal community around this place that is exploring, developing and testing novel coordination mechanisms that don't start with voting, but actually with sense making around which decisions do we want to take on what level and in what form. And I think all of this are challenges or potential projects for the next years. Then a stable platform for experimentation, co-creation, knowledge sharing and networking among domain experts as you. An incubator for local projects, networks and businesses. This is still lagging somewhat behind, to be honest. But we are very keen on establishing more local links in the next year, once the stable foundation with the company and such is established. And then, last but not least, a node in an emerging global network of intentional communities, or the region coordination we have been talking about on the first day. So yeah, call to action. If you want to support us, stake on us.
What's up? Let the shilling start in the afternoon.
Yeah, we will do a workshop this afternoon on how to get as much stake as possible on the Commons Hub in the coming days. And we invite you very much if you have something to contribute there. Propose events. I think Emily is opening our website, which is ready to be shared. But yeah, other ways to get involved. Propose your ideas. We are very happy for proposals of hackathons, of projects wanting to test their tech, or this is kind of distracting. This is where you can stake on us. Right, just click there, it leads you to Kepler, enter max, and pew. Emily's doing it right now.
Yeah, it leads you to Kepler, to your account, and just stake, and that's good. Yeah, it's Julia's laptop. Someone send him at him, please.
Okay, so coming back to this call to action. Formulate your challenge. That's what I was looking for. Or join or spawn working groups. We are looking to decentralize activities here. And in that we understand us as stewards providing a stable base, a stable foundation, but then more and more enabling others to pursue their small projects, working groups, whatnot, more or less autonomously from us. And yeah, we look forward to co-creating with you. And now we have Noman.
You are Commons Hub Maxi? We hope so. Now we have Lawrence Newman, that most of you know, that has some crazy plans about Aurora. That will be this governance, public goods funding infrastructure for Cosmos, because Cosmos doesn't have one like Ethereum or the other famous public goods things. So yeah, now it's here. I would tell him to speak.
Just a quick question on that. Why did you choose Cosmos to stake on? And are there already any existing plans for other networks?
Okay. Idealistic answer because Cosmos has the most comprehensive on-chain governance structures and is very interesting to me in this regard. Side note, I'm doing my PhD on political science. My supervisor is doing research on liquid democracy platforms, and Cosmos is, yeah, the most advanced in recreating liquid democracy structures on-chain. The very pragmatic reason is also that during Ko-Fi, the Ko-Fi gathering, Ethan Bookman, one of the founders of Cosmos, asked us whether we would like to do that, and we're like, hey, yeah, totally. And to your second question, plans of expansion or of adding other networks, absolutely, we're very interested in doing that, and that would also be a part of strategic partnerships that we envision.
Yeah, there are also, I mean, it's still ideation, but for next season to do like platform-specific hackathons for like another dedicated proof of stake network. Build some stuff. I set up a new validator for that network. We launch it. Hopefully, we go live, and then repeat with another network. So get more and more onboarding on the validator.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, if you have any more questions on the Commons Hub, we have some time. Seems. Oh, Gnomon is there.
By the way, he's not here because he's having a daughter like in days, so that's why. But he really sad about it. Not the daughter, not being here.
Ahoy! Hello, players. It is not I, no man. A pleasure to see you all. I can see you. I can see you on the stream live. So, the Cosmos ecosystem. Oh, the lag. It's some turbo lag. Okay. So the Cosmos ecosystem, like all ecosystems, suffers from the problem of who takes care of the open source. Everybody benefits from the source, but who takes care of it? Who gives back to the source? And in the Cosmos ecosystem, there are many fundamental parts of the code, Cosmos SDK, CosmWasm, smart contract language, that are open source and suffer from this problem of how do they continue to receive the funding which they require to keep providing that source to everybody else. In the Ethereum ecosystem, there is Gitcoin, which kind of fills its purpose. But in the Cosmos ecosystem, there's even more of a need for such a thing. And there are more complexities to how the source is used. For example, anybody can boot up their own blockchain using the Cosmos SDK, and they don't have to give anything back. And they don't have the opportunity to give anything back because there's the lack of an interface to give back to the source. And this is something that we need not only within technological, we give back to the source. How do we interface with the source in a way that makes it easy to give back to the specific level, of granularity that we want to give to? For example, how do I give back to the source of my neighborhood? How do I give back to the source of my city? How do I give back to the source of my country, etc.? And in the Cosmos ecosystem, how do I give back to that open source developer who is doing something really cool with Cosmosm? How do I give back to a chain who I feel is doing specifically important work? How do I give back to the Cosmos SDK, which makes everything possible? That's where Aurora comes in. Aurora as an interface for public goods funding in the Cosmos ecosystem. Aurora is based on the WeCo interface, which allows us to plan things holonically, which means that we can have multiple parents which give down their source to those who need to benefit from it. To give an example, the Osmosis chain uses the Cosmos SDK. So they can share some of their resources with the Cosmos SDK to make sure that it has the funds that it needs, so they can give back in that way. It also uses Cosmosm, and so they can give back to Cosmosm. But there are many different chains that depend on the Cosmos SDK, many different chains that depend on Cosmosm. And by having multiple parents, Cosmosm can receive multiple different sources simultaneously. Something which is really cool about the Cosmos architecture is that it uses decentralized proof of stake. And with it comes validation and validation rewards. And validation rewards allows for a really cool block by block reward system where we can make it possible to delegate to specific projects and reward them block by block. So in the Aurora system, it will allow people to choose which level of granularity they want to delegate their rewards to. For example, the Commons Hub, or to a specific chain, or to a specific project, or to a specific user, or even to reward somebody who made a post that generated an idea, which then led on to further development of the source. And this is really important to have this high-level resolution of the distribution of funding, that it is not only to big bodies, to large chains, to community pools, where everything has to be governed on, every decision has to be made. Rather, funds can flow to whatever level is necessary. To weave in the idea of quadratic funding and the interesting things that can be done with holonics and quadratic funding, of having multiple parents, you can have children of children, parents of parents. And in that way, you can match the quadratic funding from multiple generations. And in so doing, you can ensure that from the largest pool, even the smallest projects can receive their benefits, but also from their direct parents, from the ones from whom they receive the most benefits directly. You can ensure that a larger ratio of funds comes from them. So you can have this balancing out of a small amount of funds coming from the pool which funds the ecosystem as a whole. And then as you get closer and closer to the project, you can receive more and more funds from each of the parents. That's a general overview of the Aurora project. I will post a document into the chat for everybody to read through. I'm very happy to see all your faces. I'm sad to not be there today with you all, but I hope that you have a superb time at the hub, one of my favorite places on the planet. And I wish you farewell.
Okay, we did it. The morning is finished. Remember the key lesson of today: stay calm, Commons Hub. We can go have lunch.
Last way to support us: buy our T-shirts.
Okay. We are free to go. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.